Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Hokage. Start by prying Hinata away. Chapter 1. Fire Country, Konoha Village, Ninja School. A red-haired boy lay sleeping in the last row. Uruka, who was standing on the podium, glanced at the boy, shook his head and ignored him. Now let's divide the classes into classes. Those whose names are called will stand next to the corresponding teacher. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura-chan, Class 7. After the classes were finally divided, the red-haired boy stretched his legs while looking at the empty classrooms around him. As he expected, there was no mentor to guide him. The red-haired boy's name is Fungen. 13 years ago, he inexplicably traveled through time and became a baby, entering a world called the Hokage Ninja. When he was born, he discovered that he had no idea who his father was, and his mother also died in childbirth. From then on, his growth was accompanied by endless malice, and everyone who knew his mother hated him, so that when he was 6 years old, he took the finances he had saved over the past few years and left his so-called relatives, whose only name was Fungen. Fortunately, he has the 7-attribute chakra and the red-haired chakra. Go home. Fungen grabbed the small satchel and prepared to leave. Fungen, there's still no one left. Fungen turned around and saw a girl with black hair and white eyes cleaning the house with a broom and dustpan in her hands. Ah, Hinata, what's wrong? Hinata lowered her head slightly. It's our cleaning duty today. Fungen Hinata works in a team of 2 and cleans every Friday, and today's last day of the shift happens to be Friday. I almost forgot. Fungen put down his satchel and took the broom and dustpan from Hinata's hand. You go back first, I will clean the rest. Hinata lowered her head and murmured softly, but, we should clean together. You have cleaned the windows, balconies, and every corner in the classroom, but you still want to fight for the ground. Fungen suddenly raised his eyebrows and held Hinata's little hand. Feeling being held by Fungen, Hinata's face instantly turned red, and she subconsciously tried to pull her hand away. Don't move yet. Fungen gently opened Hinata's little hand, and carefully pulled out a few pieces of wood from Hinata's hand. All right. After careful inspection, Fungen let go of Hinata's hand when he found that there were no debris. There is still a small blush on Hinata's face. Thank you, but how do you know there will be thorns on my hands? I didn't even notice it myself. Of course I was also pricked by this broom. Fungen said as he raised the broom. There were many small wooden thorns on the handle, which could not be seen casually. After holding the broom tightly for a while, I felt a slight pain. Hinata wiped the glass, and her hands were stained with water. Naturally, it was easier to get stuck in the wooden thorns. As a member of the Hyuga clan, she didn't notice her hands being pricked. She took hygiene too seriously. Hinata was a little embarrassed, because it was she who caused Fungen to be stabbed by a wooden thorn. You'd better go back first, otherwise you will be scolded by your father again. When she thought of her father, Hyuga Hiashi, she looked flustered, nodded quickly, and trotted out of the classroom. However, Hinata was still a little embarrassed. Before leaving, she said guiltily, Fungen, I'm sorry, thank you for your hard work. Seeing Hinata's surprise, Fungen burst into laughter. After a moment, Fungen made sure that there was no one in the class, and quickly formed seals with his hands. Shadow clone technique. Bang bang bang. 5 clones similar to Fungen appeared. As early as many years ago, Fungen discovered that the sealing methods he had seen in his previous life and the principles of ninjutsu were exactly the same in this world. With the memory of his previous life, he remembered the principles of ninjutsu and put them into practice. Over the years, I have basically mastered it. You go to the first row, you go to the second row. Fungen has a clear division of labor, with 6 people working in a row and cleaning up in a few minutes. Done. After Fungen released his clone, he picked up his bag on the table and prepared to leave. At this moment, the door was pushed open. Pink-haired little Sakura walked in a panic. Fungen glanced at it, ignored it, and walked out the door. Wait, did you see what's in my drawer? Seeing that Fungen was about to leave without looking back, little Sakura grabbed Fungen's satchel. Little Sakura said with cold eyes, did you take my things? He didn't like the nymphomaniac Sakura very much, and he didn't provoke her after he came here. Today, she actually suspected that he had taken her things. Fungen said calmly, tell me, what did you throw away? Hearing this, little Sakura was suddenly startled and said hesitantly, "Anyway, it belongs to our little girl, so I can't tell you." As he spoke, he opened his satchel. Fangin smiled. "Sure enough, the quality is extremely poor." "Fangin, what do you mean by this?" Seeing this, Fangin stopped laughing and grabbed the satchel. "Will I take your things?" "The things you are talking about must be given to Sasuke, right?" "That's right. Since you and Sasuke are in the same class, it's the most appropriate gift to give, right?" Little Sakura's eyes were wandering, and she was shocked inside. How would he know that I specially prepared 2 couple pendants to give to Sasuke? Wrong. Little Sakura's eyes immediately became more determined. "You must have stolen my pendant, otherwise how would you have known that I was going to give it to Sasuke?" "Get it you." Saying this, little Sakura started to get started. He didn't even bother to carry textbooks in his shoulder bag, but he also carried her little girl's pendant. Fangin didn't tolerate her, so she just used the body replacement technique and let little Sakura hold the wooden stake and pull it for a long time. Little Sakura was shocked when she reacted. She didn't expect Fangin to use the body replacement technique so skillfully. Normally, Fangin was in class every day, sleeping, finishing get out of class, and peeing. He continued to hang out like this until he graduated from the ninja school. At that time, Fangin actually passed the ninja qualification examination. At that time, many people still doubted whether he had cheated. Little Sakura punched the wooden stake and said viciously, "HMPH, let me see if you have my pendant in your satchel, and I will spare you." Fangin's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't expect that her potential for strange powers would be revealed at such a young age. He didn't think little Sakura could hurt him at her age, but he didn't want to take the blame either. "Look, sure, but what if not?" Fangin's series of actions have already made little Sakura feel completely confident. Otherwise, why wouldn't she dare to let me look at her satchel? The confident little Sakura puffed up her chest and said, "Impossible. If it's not in your bag, I will do whatever you ask me to do." Oh, hearing this, Fangin became somewhat interested. "This is what you said. If I do something outrageous later, Haruno Sakura, don't regret it." Hearing his words, little Sakura couldn't help but tremble. "You don't mean to want to kiss me, do you?" "Kiss? You think too much. No, you think too little, little girl." Fangin couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. A nymphomaniac with a love brain, he never expected to be so innocent. But it's normal, after all, Haruno Sakura is only 11 or 12 years old now. "What, do you regret it?" "I don't really care." With that said, Fangin walked past little Sakura. "Who says I regret it?" Little Sakura grabbed Fangin's clothes and showed a determined expression. "I want to see it." "Since you want to watch it so much, then go ahead and watch it." Fangin threw the satchel to little Sakura. When she thought that the pendant carefully prepared for Sasuke was still in her bag, little Sakura glared at him fiercely. "Humph, if you break it, see if I don't beat you away." But as she took the bag, she felt something bad. This satchel is so light that it feels like an empty bag no matter how you touch it. Her heart suddenly went cold. Fangin smiled. "Forget it if you don't dare to look at it, just give it back to me." He was just trying to scare her. If it were in the future, she might still be interested, but now, it was the same in every aspect, too small. Does anyone really want to do something to little Sakura? She is a primary school student now. As he said this, Fangin stretched out his hand to take away the satchel. Little Sakura quickly stepped back. "Wait. So anxious. There must be something wrong in my heart. Maybe there are compartments inside." Thinking to herself, little Sakura couldn't help but smile proudly. "Haha, you're scared." Little Sakura suddenly opened the zipper and rummaged around inside with her little hands. No, still not. How could it not be? She stuck her head in unbelievingly, looking for her so-called compartment. Tick-tock. Time passed minute by minute. Fangin sat on the table, watching little Sakura rummaging through her empty bag without giving up, and couldn't help but yawn. "It's been several minutes. It's time for you to perform your magic trick, right?" Little Sakura gave him a resentful look and threw the bag to Fangin. "HMPH, just do it if you want to." With that said, little Sakura closed her eyes tightly, pouted her mouth, and her tender face was slightly flushed. Just as dusk fell on her through the window, she looked a little bit cute. Fungin was startled, then smiled and walked out the door. He didn't expect little Sakura to actually take it seriously. For a long time, Sakura, who had been tense all the time, couldn't help but feel her lips were sore. Only then did she notice that the surroundings seemed to become very quiet. "Hello," she tried shouting, but no one responded to her. Then her tightly closed eyes quietly opened a crack. "Where are people?" Not seeing Fungin, she simply opened her eyes. Then she saw from the window that Fungin's back had appeared at the school gate. Little Sakura opened the window and shouted angrily, "Fungin!" Hearing this, Fungin looked back at the window, waved to her, and left. "Just leave like that." Little Sakura pressed her sore lips, her little heart pounding in her heart. "Fungin seems to be quite handsome." Then she shook her head quickly and whispered to herself, "Haruno Sakura, what are you thinking about? Sasuke is your target." Fungin walked into a barbecue restaurant carrying a small satchel. His mother didn't leave much property, but he only used it by himself, so he didn't worry about not having enough money. He could spend it as much as he wanted. If he really ran out of money, he could still take on some commissions, and kill wild boars to pass the time and pay back the money. Can make money. It would be best to pry Hinata away from Xiao Wangmao. When he was a child, he had already modified the scene of yellow hair saving Hinata and changed it to red hair saving Hinata. Now it depends on whether there is any chance of contact in the future. Fungin was planning his future in his mind while eating barbecue. At this time, a gentle and pleasant voice came. "Fungin." Fungin heard the sound and went away, and looked sideways and saw Hinata walking in followed by 3 people. As soon as I thought of Hinata, Hinata arrived. "Hinata, shouldn't you be resting at home by now?" Hinata lowered her head and shook her head. "Teacher Hong took our 8th class to have barbecue, she said she wanted to get to know us better." "Oh, I got it." Seeing Hinata appear, Fungin thought his cheat was exported and came true. Other people's children who traveled far away had the system given to them by Blue Star's mother, but what about you? Like an unloved child, he has traveled so far away that he has crossed dimensions, and he is not even given a big gift package. Fungin, Teacher Hong and the others called me over. Seeing Hinata's little hands holding the corners of her clothes in embarrassment, Fungin couldn't help but curl up the corner of her mouth. "Go ahead." Then Hinata nodded slightly and walked to sit next to Yuhi Kurenai. While Fungin was eating barbecue, he greedily looked at the soju on the tables of the adults next door. There is no Sprite in this world, and soju is not allowed to be drunk by minors, so he has no choice but to eat barbecue with juice. Hinata, who sat next to Yuhi Kurenai, lowered her head and peeked in Fungin's direction from time to time. Fungin is gentle and considerate, and he is a very nice person, but why no teacher is willing to take him? Why is he always alone? It's the same at school. He doesn't seem to have many friends. I don't know if I am his friend. Woolen cloth. Yuhi Hong chuckled and said, "You seem to care about Fungin very much." Hinata's face immediately turned red upon hearing this. "Teacher Hong, I didn't." There was a smile on Yuhi Hong's lips, but she could clearly see Hinata's little moves. Woof woof. As soon as their barbecue was served, Akamaru in Inuzuka Kiba's arms came out of his head to lick it. Akamaru. Ya grabbed Akamaru and stuffed it back into his arms, patting its head. "I'll clamp it for you later." Akamaru whimpered slightly, his ears drooping in aggrieveness. "What a cute puppy, here you go." Yuhi Kurenai took out a new pair of chopsticks from the side and picked up a piece of meat and fed it to Akamaru. Kiba looked at Akamaru and said, "Quickly say thank you, Kurenai-sensei." "Woo, woof, woof, woof. So good." Ya rubbed Akamaru's head. Regardless of whether others understood it or not, Ya obviously did. "Okay, let's all do it ourselves." As Yuhi Hong picked up a piece of barbecue, the other 2 began to pick up the meat and eat it. Abarame Shino. Call. Fungin touched his bulging belly. "Beautiful. Although Sprite is missing, this barbecue is really delicious." He stood up, looked at Hinata, smiled and waved, "I'm leaving, Hinata." "Ah, okay." Hinata stood up suddenly. Fungin smiled at her and left. In class, he and Hinata are classmates, so they have a better relationship. His relationship with other classmates is relatively average. He sleeps every day, and he is not like Naruto who deliberately does weird things to attract attention. Naturally, very few people pay attention to him. Several people around were startled by Hinata's sudden standing up, and they couldn't help but look at her. Feeling the gaze, Hinata quickly sat down with a red face, stuffed a piece of barbecue into her mouth and pretended that nothing happened. But the blush on her face that refused to go away didn't look peaceful. She lowered her head and wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Inuzuka Kiba asked, "Hey, Hinata, are you reacting too much? Did you hear me?" Hinata lowered her head and mechanically stuffed barbecue into her mouth. At this time, her mind was filled with Feng greeting her, and she could not hear the sounds from the outside world. Have he and I become friends now? He probably just said hello casually, right? No, then why did he only say hello to me? The more she thought about it, the more confused she became, and the movements of holding the barbecue in her hands became faster and faster. After a while, Hinata was flabbergasted by most of the roasted meat. Inuzuka Kiba shouted, "Ah, leave some barbecue for me." Seeing Hinata's panic, Yuhi Hong became a little interested in Feng and who was leaving. Did he really just have better luck than Naruto in passing the ninja qualification exam? The next day, Feng woke up early in the morning. He scratched his hair helplessly. Now that you have graduated, you have developed your biological clock, right? He washed up briefly, and after breakfast, he took a walk in the alleys of Konoha village as usual on vacation, basking in the sun and entering old age ahead of schedule. Look, that ignorant kid is here again. If my child were like him, I would break his legs. Stop talking, this kid is actually quite pitiful. He has no father or mother, and he's not a bad person either. He's not as naughty as Naruto. Tian Wei is right, my child is very naughty. It would be great if he was as obedient as Feng. At least it would save me some worries. Don't tell me, every time he takes a walk with his hands behind his back, I always feel like he doesn't look like a child. Several women in the surrounding alleys gathered together and talked to Feng who was walking back and forth in the alley. Compared to ordinary people, Feng's five senses were much more sensitive, and he could clearly hear what they were saying when discussing themselves, but he didn't really care and could still greet them with a smile. After all, in his previous life, he would always encounter such a military station at the entrance of the village, when he returned to his hometown after holidays, and he was used to it. Feng smiled and said hello to several people. "Hello, aunties." "Hello." When several women saw Feng approaching, they also greeted him with smiles. One of the women in purple clothes asked curiously, "Feng, why don't you do the task? I see other graduating children are clamoring to take on the task and prepare for the Chunin exam. What if I become a Chunin?" The woman was startled. This was the first time she heard from a ninja that someone was not interested in Chunin. "I heard that Chunin can accept higher level commissions, which is very profitable." Feng shook his head. "No, auntie, high level commissions are very dangerous. Think about it if you die for a few taels of silver. I am only a teenager now, and my good years cannot be ruined easily." Quote, "Your youth is spent chatting and sunbathing with us aunties, right?" Several women looked at each other with strange expressions on their faces. Why is this guy so old-fashioned? Isn't this age supposed to be full of passion and positivity? Aunts are busy, I'll go somewhere else. Feng passed from this alley to another. Feng, a female voice came. Then, a long-haired woman with a bandage on her white thigh and a big breast came forward. Feng raised his eyes and asked, "It's Hong, is something wrong?" Due to the memory of his previous life, he subconsciously called out Yuhi Hong's name. He scratched his head in embarrassment. "What a boy, you actually called me by my first name." Yuhi Hong raised her eyebrows, but she didn't care too much. "Why don't you go do the mission?" Feng was a little helpless. "Why do you always ask me this question?" He said in one breath, "I don't want to do quests. I'm not short of money right now, and if I encounter some over-the-top monster, like Momochi Zabuza, I'll be dead." After hearing this, Yuhi Hong became more interested in him. The eagerness for quick success and instant benefits of his peers formed a sharp contrast with his unique attitude. Many people like him are eager for quick success and always put themselves in danger, so Jonin has the rules to lead the team. It's good to have a stable mind. No wonder Hinata cares about you. Are you interested in training with our 8th class? Feng asked doubtfully. Why are you looking for me? And haven't you chosen the 3 people? I think you are worthy of training. Feng glanced at her. Where did you see it? Intuition. Besides, Naruto has a teacher to guide him, but you don't. Are you mentally balanced? Fungin nodded without hesitation. Balance. Naruto is the protagonist, he is just a passerby, and Kakuzu is not the main character. Yuhi Hong sighed with a pretense of regret. Oh, there's nothing we can do about it. When we were at the barbecue restaurant yesterday, Hinata kept begging me to take you with me. Since you don't want to, I have to go back and tell Hinata that you rejected her. Ah, just trying to impress me with little Hinata. In the clearing, there were several targets fixed on the trees, with shurikens stuck crookedly on them. At this time, Hinata, who was training with her Byakugan open, noticed two figures walking behind her. Teacher Hong is back, huh? The one behind is Fungin. Hinata suddenly closed her eyes and turned around to say hello shyly. Ah, Fungin, why are you here? Hearing this, Fungin raised his eyes and looked at Shihihong. Are your children lying to you? It can be seen from Hinata's reaction that she must be unaware. Yuhi Hong rubbed his head, covered her mouth and smiled softly, but Hinata really cares about you. Then he looked at everyone. Please stop for a moment. From now on, Fungin will train and perform tasks with our 8th squad. The remaining two people also stopped their training movements and slowly walked to Yuhi Hong. Akamaru looked at Fungin and shouted twice. Woof woof. Inuzuka Kiba patted it, grinned at Fungin and said, let's get to know each other again. My name is Inuzuka Kiba, and I am the man who wants to become Hokage. Fungin nodded and said, my name is Fungin, and your wish will come true. It's a pity that it was in a dream, he didn't say the second part. Hearing Inuzuka Kiba's words, Maplayan immediately thought of the way he became the Hokage in Infinite Tsukuyomi. It was stipulated that every ninja must raise a dog. Fortunately, in reality, the Hokage did not let Kiba become the Hokage, otherwise the village would probably have no name. It should be called Guzi Village instead. Huan, welcome Fungin, please give me your advice in the future. Hinata lowered her head and spoke softer and quieter. Okay, please give me some advice. Fungin raised the corners of his mouth slightly and deliberately stepped forward to hold Hinata's little hand. Hinata's face suddenly turned red, and she quickly retracted her hand, saying shyly. I was very careful this time, and my hand was not pricked. His heart melted when he saw little Hinata's cute look. Just as he was immersed in this, Yuhi Hong punched him in the head. Stop bullying Hinata. How could I? Fungin rubbed his head and blinked at Hinata. Hinata, I didn't bully you, did I? Hinata nodded slightly. HMPH, I have to leave first. You guys should train well, Yuhi Hong said and left. Before anyone could ask her what she was doing, she disappeared. Fungin, come and train with me in actual combat. Inuzuka Kiba approached and shouted. But I only know some basic ninjutsu. Fungin deliberately refused. He only came here because little Hinata was here. If he could pry Hinata away, it would be worth it even if he was chased and beaten by yellow-haired boys. What's more, Naruto is still stupid and doesn't know how wonderful Hinata is and what kind of training he doesn't have. Those who train are second best. And even if it comes to actual combat training, he must be with Hinata. His wife must be taken care of from a young age, otherwise she will be abducted by that yellow hair when she grows up. But Inuzuka Kiba didn't seem to notice his polite refusal and put his hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, it's just training. I swear I will only use some simple ninjutsu. Seeing that Inuzuka Kiba was a hot-blooded idiot who was similar to Naruto, he knew that it would be difficult to refuse, so he said helplessly, okay, but let me prepare first. It just so happens that he can see what his level is. Inuzuka Kiba put his hands on his head. Okay, just call me when you are ready. Inuzuka Kiba thought he was too nervous. I secretly muttered in my heart, I'll only use 70% of my strength in a while. Then he glanced at Fungin again. Seeing his solemn look, Inuzuka Kiba shook his head. Forget it, use 50% of your strength. It would be bad if it hits him too hard. Fungin, who was standing aside, frowned slightly, with a solemn look on his face, thinking to himself. I must control Chakra. If I accidentally kill him, it will be over. I won't use A-level ninjutsu like the Great Waterfall technique. I'll use D-level ninjutsu instead. Ninjutsu is divided into SABCDE level ninjutsu. The level does not represent the power. The higher the level, the more difficult it is to learn and master. The lower the level, the easier it is to master. The three-body technique taught in the ninja school is an E-level ninjutsu. Fangin pondered in his mind whether he, a genin who had just graduated from the ninja school, had mastered an A-level ninjutsu and was self-taught. If he wasn't going to be confessed that day, he would be arrested and sliced into pieces. Inuzuka Kiba looked at Fangin, who still looked worried, and couldn't help but asked, "Are you not ready yet?" Fangin glanced at Ya and said, "Okay, come on." Hinata stopped shuriken training, stepped aside, and said silently, "Come on, Fangin. Aren't you going to make the first move? Then I will make the first move." Inuzuka Kiba lay on the ground, four-legged technique. All his chakra flow was seen concentrated on his limbs, and his thin limbs instantly became thicker. It looks like an enhanced ninjutsu. Fangin still hasn't taken action. This is his first actual combat. His estimation of Rya's ability depends entirely on Rya's performance as a Hokage ninja in his previous life. Now I'm really curious about what it would be like to experience it myself. Fangin, why don't you move? Inuzuka Kiba lay on the ground and looked at him doubtfully. Fangin felt confused. Have you not launched the attack yet? How can I move? I didn't expect you to be such an arrogant person, Inuzuka Kiba said coldly. Ya's body has been strengthened with the four legs technique, and his speed and strength have doubled. Ya feels that if he strikes first, Fangin will not be able to react in time. Now his casual attitude made him very angry. Base. Using his hands and feet together, he suddenly launched an offensive. It can be seen from the four shallow pits in his original position that these 4-foot technique greatly enhanced his body. Not only was it powerful, it was also extremely fast, appearing in front of Fangin in an instant. Inuzuka Kiba swung his paw towards Fangin. At this time, Fangin was still motionless. In Ya's eyes, he just thought that he was too fast and he couldn't even react. It's over, Fangin. Hinata didn't dare to look and hurriedly covered her eyes. At such a close range, it was impossible for him to hide away. Boom, bang bang. What? Inuzuka Kiba's pupils narrowed and he stared in disbelief at the wooden stake that was knocked away by his paw. Body replacement technique. His nose suddenly twitched and he immediately scratched his paw behind him. Fangin, who was behind him, quickly moved out of the way and couldn't help but sigh. It's still a bit difficult to sneak attack a sentient ninja, even under the effect of the body replacement technique. Inuzuka Kiba lay on the ground and looked at Fangin. If it weren't for his keen sense of smell, he would have been defeated. It seems I'm arrogant, Tongya. Inuzuka Kiba suddenly spun at high speed in the air, like a small tornado, heading towards Fangin. Fangin immediately jumped back. While he was still in the air, he quickly formed the 6 seals of Si, Wei, Shen, Hai, Wu and Yin with his hands. Over the years, he has already mastered the Great Fireball Technique Grandmaster, which can be released with only one tail seal, the Yin seal. It's just that in the competition, there is no need to reveal your true strength. Fire-style Great Fireball Technique. Puff. A spherical flame with a diameter of 5 meters suddenly appeared, spitting out from his mouth and attacking the pursuing Inuzuka Kiba. Oops, only a little bit of chakra was used. After he intentionally controlled chakra, he didn't expect that the coverage area would still be so wide. This was the pain point of having chakra. It was difficult to grasp how much a little bit was. Inuzuka Kiba was still spinning at high speed, but when he saw such a big fireball, his eyes nearly popped out. Didn't he say he only knew very basic ninjutsu? Take it with his head, he doesn't want to turn into a roasted suckling pig. Ya immediately stopped spinning and jumped away suddenly. Even so, when the great fireball technique hit the ground, the small ball of fire still bounced on his body. He quickly ran away and rolled on the ground, trying to put out the flames. When Fangin and Hinata saw this, they quickly ran over to help. After a few kicks, the flames on Inuzuka Kiba's body were completely extinguished. He let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Inuzuka Kiba was okay, otherwise he would have broken the law of fire style's inability to kill people. Inuzuka staggered up from the ground, clutching his burned teeth, revealing his big pink pants with dog heads printed on them, and shouted with a black line on his face, "Didn't you say you only know the most basic ninjutsu?" Faced with Inuzuka Kiba's question, Fangin touched his nose in embarrassment. He couldn't help it. After thinking for a long time, he couldn't remember that he had any useful D-level ninjutsu. Although Great Fireball was AC-level ninjutsu, it was considered the basis of fire style. But why haven't I seen you use this move during the competition in the ninja school? You must have just learned it, right? Inuzuka Kiba stared at him with an incredulous expression. In the ninja school, Fungin slept every day and failed to perform well in competitions. Basically, people at the same time regarded him as a weakling who was only slightly better than Naruto, because Naruto failed to pass the ninja qualification exam and Fungin did. For such a low-ranking guy to suddenly use such a powerful ninjutsu, anyone would be greatly disappointed. But if he were to know that Fungin actually mastered the Great Fireball technique when he first learned to walk, he would probably start to doubt life. No, I also studied for a long time and barely mastered it on the eve of graduation. Fungin calmly coaxed this wounded boy. I see, I almost thought you were some kind of genius. It's really the result of hard work. It seems I didn't work hard enough. My wish is to become a Hokage. If I fail anywhere, I can't fail in my hard work. Inuzuka Kiba clenched his fists, and after seeing Fungin's strength, he made up his mind to train harder. Fungin, you will be my second opponent. Fungin asked in confusion. Why the second one? The first opponent is him. Inuzuka Kiba glanced at the man who was silently feeding bugs in the corner. Fungin followed his gaze and saw that it was a man who was dressed incompatibly with everyone else. He raised a high collar to cover his mouth and wore a pair of sunglasses on his face. Aburame Shino, a trendy Konoha man who couldn't see any changes in mood. It turned out to be Shino. He didn't see Shino from the beginning and thought that Shino didn't come to training. His name is Aburame Shino. Don't look at him as if he has no sense of existence. In fact, he is very strong. If you don't use fire style, he will definitely give you a headache. Fungin nodded. Fungin agrees with this very much. In the memory of his previous life, Aburame Shino was a man who had never failed. Apart from this point, there is another point that he agrees with very much, that is, Shino is a bug player. He can't see anything in the second dimension, but his feelings now are no different from reality. When he imagines that under Shino's clothes, even there were bugs all over his body, and his scalp was numb. Then several people started training on their own, feeding bugs to bugs and dogs to dogs. The only one who trains seriously is Hinata. Fungin deliberately found a good seat and sat aside, staring at Hinata. Whenever Hinata opened her eyes, she noticed that Kaide was sitting behind her and looking at her. She was so nervous that she couldn't even open her eyes. As long as I can't see him, he's not looking at me. With this self-hypnosis, Hinata entered the state of training. When the four of them were training until noon, a familiar figure slowly walked over. Fungin and others greeted in unison, Teacher Hong. Yuhi Hong nodded. I'm back, and I took a commission for you. Very good. Inuzuka Kiba and the other three were very happy. They had long wanted to shine in the mission. Have fun for a while, you won't be able to laugh when you see the mission assignment. Fungin glanced at them sympathetically. Yuhi Hong brought several people to the mission location. In a small village, there were a bunch of wild boars running around. Teacher Hong, is our mission to hunt wild boars? That's right, remember to minimize the damage the wild boar can do to the village during the battle. Inuzuka Kiba's face was full of disbelief. This is too boring. I also thought about fighting against ninjas from other countries, and I am ready to fight. Yuhi Hong shook her head slightly. If you keep holding on to such an idea, you will only bury yourself in the mission. Compared to Inuzuka Kiba, Hinata and Shino were more aware. Although they felt a huge gap in their hearts, they still quickly went to catch the wild boar. After all, this was their first mission, and they didn't want to end in failure. I understand, Benny-sensei. Inuzuka Kiba quickly regained his fighting spirit and joined Hinata and the others. Akamaru, let's go. Woof. Tooth. Inuzuka Kiba and Akamaru rotated at high speed and instantly transformed into two powerful small tornadoes, killing several wild boars in an instant. But it also angered the remaining wild boars, causing them all to go on a rampage. For a time, they had to protect the houses in the village and drive away wild boars, which made a few people feel that they were careless about the head and the tail. Just as Fungin and Yuhi Hong stood watching from a high place, there was suddenly a strong push on the back from behind. Don't try to be lazy, Yuhi Hong pushed him down. Due to the inertia of moving forward, Feng'an rushed down the slope and rushed into the wild boars. After stabilizing his body, he was about to curse a few words, but suddenly he felt several eyes from the rampaging wild boars locked on him. The wild boars grunted and rushed towards Feng'an. Unfortunately, their speed is too slow and their strength is not strong. Compared to Hinata and the others, it is much easier for Feng'an to deal with them. With one punch and one kick, the attacking wild boar can be easily dealt with even without ninjutsu. The wild boars that were beaten away all ran to find others, and Feng'an returned to his leisurely state. Yuhi Hong crossed her arms and looked at him helplessly. Why is this kid not working hard at all? The conditions of the other three were also observed. Except for destroying Feng'an, Shino's performance is the best. His insect technique allows him to protect the house from being destroyed, and can easily drive away and kill wild boars. Seeing Shino's performance, Yuhi Hong showed an expression of admiration. In a situation where you have to protect your house and keep the wild pigs away, both are doing very well. Then he noticed Inuzuka Kiba. With the cooperation of him and Akamaru, the number of wild boars gradually decreased. Unfortunately, under his tornado, many houses were damaged by him. Tooth is too reckless. Yuhi Hong shook her head when she saw him. Fortunately, she also deliberately reminded her to try her best to protect the house. Hinata on the other side, in order to better protect the house, after turning on the Byakugan, chooses to defend and counterattack. Once a wild boar tries to destroy the house, she will give priority to blocking that one. The advantage of this is that it can better protect the house. But it also took a lot of physical exertion on her. It fits Hinata's character, but it's unrealistic to protect all the houses with such indecision. Yuhi Hong has made preliminary judgments about them, so that in future training, their weaknesses can be strengthened in a targeted manner. Seeing Hinata in trouble, Feng'an quickly came to her side. Let me help you, Hinata. Feng'an saw the wild boar rushing towards Hinata, ducked and punched the wild boar. Boom! The wild boar that received the punch lost its breath before even making a sound, and flew backwards several meters away. Yuhi Hong, who was observing from the side, noticed that Feng'an's hands were covered with varying sizes of chakra, and murmured. Use chakra to cover your fists. Although his mastery of chakra is not exquisite, he can think of using chakra like this at this age. Why is his profile in school so mediocre? Seeing Feng'an coming to her side, Hinata's tense body relaxed a little. Thanks. Don't thank me anymore. Feng'an approached and rubbed her head. Let's deal with these wild boars together. Hinata nodded. Okay. Feng'an could tell that Hinata, who had been keeping her eyes blank, was a little tired, but he also knew that this shy girl had to fight side by side with her to make her feel recognized, rather than calling her to rest. Hinata has always worked hard, but unfortunately, her talent is not outstanding. As a branch house, Hyuga Neji mastered 8 trigrams 64 palms at the age of 13, but she could barely master it when she was 16. Type out. He noticed Hinata's chest rising and falling, and the white eyes were showing signs of fading. It seems we need to speed up the process of dealing with the remaining wild boars. Feng'an was even faster than before, flying through the wild boars. His fists were covered with chakra, and he could kill one with one punch. Seeing his flowing movements, Shihi's red eyes twitched slightly. It's so fast. It's far faster than most Chunin. I really found a treasure. The more things revealed about Feng'an, the more Yuhi Hong became suspicious of the problem, and she had heard a little bit about various rumors in Konoha village. The destruction of the Senju clan, the destruction of the Uchiha clan, the destruction of the Uzumaki country, etc. She looked at his bright red hair. Could he really be a descendant of the Uzumaki clan? So he was deliberately suppressed by some people. Yuhi Hong shook her head. She couldn't think too much about the purpose of such a thing, nor could she think about it. It was not her place to speculate on the thoughts of those at the top. After a while, the wild boars all lay down together and ran as fast as they could. Actual combat is indeed much better than practicing at home. Feng'an looked at the chakra he had condensed in his hand. The size had become much more stable. If he releases the Great Fireball technique again in his current state, he will definitely be able to better control the size of the fireball. Hinata put her little hand on her heaving chest and stood behind Feng'an. Thank you, Feng'an, luckily you were here. Feng'an turned around. put his hand on her head, and said in a joking tone, "Thank you very much, miss." Hinata suddenly raised her eyes and looked at Fungin. She opened her mouth and before she spoke, her face was already flushed. "Can you not call me miss? I like Fungin, call me by my name." After saying that, her eyes were a little red and swollen, and she quickly lowered her gaze. "This is the first time you and I have looked at each other." Fungin helped her push up the broken hair on her cheeks and said with a smile, "If you promise me that you won't always thank me, I won't call you miss." Quote. Okay, Hinata quickly raised her face to respond, but her eyes were wandering and she still didn't dare to look at him, only looking at the bottom of his neck. Fungin smiled warmly. Hinata still speaks smoothly. "Hey, we're still around." Jealousy changed Inuzuka Kiba beyond recognition. Akamaru also poked his head out of Inuzuka Kiba's arms and cursed, "Woof woof woof, woof woof woof." Yuhi Hong also looked at Fungin and the two with an ant's smile on her face. Hinata reacted and quickly ran behind Yuhi Kurenai and hid behind her. Fungin glanced at Inuzuka Kiba and silently formed a seal with his hands. Seeing his familiar technique, Inuzuka Kiba immediately thought of the terrifying Great Fireball. He hurriedly hid behind the house and shouted at Yuhi Kurenai, "Teacher Kurenai, he wants to kill me." Yuhi Hong raised her eyebrows, showing great interest in Fungin. "Is he good at fire style?" Because the seal formation speed was very slow, she could tell at a glance that it was the seal of fire style, Great Fireball technique, but there was no chakra flowing on Fungin's body, so there was no need to stop it. Fungin saw Inuzuka Kiba and quickly hid, the corners of his mouth slightly curved. His original intention was to scare him, otherwise a yin seal would kill him instantly. "The mission is completed, let's go back," Fungin said. "Wait a minute, Teacher Hong, yeah, come and help me too." Inuzuka Kiba took a few peeks and realized that Fungin was trying to scare him, so he ran over with an angry smile. "What's wrong? Of course I'm going to take these trophies back," Fungin said as he picked up a wild boar that was almost as tall as him and threw it to Inuzuka Kiba. Okay, then the two of them carried a pig's trotter in each hand. After taking 4 trotters in total, they couldn't free their hands, but there were still several more on the ground. Hinata saw Fungin and the others were at a loss as to what to do, so she took the initiative and said, "I'm here to help, too." Fungin shook his head quickly. "No need, even 4 of them can't finish it. Besides, even if you want to take it, Teacher Hong is still there. How could she be embarrassed to let you take it?" Hinata nodded. "I know." Yuhi Hong crossed her hands on her chest and glanced at him. "The little ghost head is quite good at yin and yang, and I don't know who he learned it from." "Let's go quickly, the sun is going down," Yuhi Kurenai said. Immediately, Fungin and Inuzuka Kiba each carried 2 wild boars on their backs and rushed to the village. When night arrived, Fungin and others finished handing over the tasks and came to the training ground. After he put the wild boar down, Fungin counted and found that the number was wrong. "Yeah, did you get 3 of them back?" "No, I wanted to carry another one back, but I don't have free hands." Inuzuka Kiba was picking up wood in the forest. "Hey, that's weird. I brought it back," an emotionless voice came from Fungin's ears. Fungin was startled and looked sideways. It turns out to be Shino. "It makes sense. Your invisibility is so powerful that you can do it silently." Abarame Shino. Then Fungin found a suitable position in the surroundings and put on airs. Not long after, Inuzuka Kiba and Hinata also came back with a lot of branches. "Everything is ready." Fungin quickly formed a seal. Puff! In an instant, a fireball with a diameter of 1 meter flew out of his mouth. Fortunately, Yuhi Kurenai was there this time, and she quickly picked up Hinata beside her and moved away. Fungin noticed at the first moment that he accidentally used chakra too much and got out of the way early. Only Inuzuka Kiba failed to dodge in time and was burned to his buttocks. Akamaru hurriedly peed and helped him put out the flames. Yuhi Hong asked, "What do you want to do with so much power?" Fungin said calmly, "I didn't want to either. I have been very restrained. I didn't expect it to be so powerful." The flames on Ya's body on the side had been extinguished, and he got up with a sad face. "You did it on purpose. I disturbed you and Hinata from being intimate with each other before, so you took the opportunity to take revenge. Teacher Hong made the decision for me." Saying that, Ya ran towards Yuhi Kurenai. "Hinata, who was behind, moved her little hands around in front of her and said shyly, "There is no such thing as ching-ching, me. What the hell does it smell like?" Kurenai Yuhi frowned and sniffed, and found that it was the smell of Inuzuka Kiba. "Don't come here again. Go and take revenge against Fungin. I allow it." She blocked her nose with the index finger of one hand, and pushed the tooth's face with the other hand to prevent him from getting closer. "How do you want me to fight? With my physical attack skills, can I chase after someone who can easily spray a 5-meter great fireball?" Inuzuka Kiba was about to cry but had no tears. It wasn't that he didn't want to fight Fungin, it was because he couldn't fight him. The main thing of fire style is high coverage, so he would fight it if he was stupid. Ahem. Fungin scratched his head and coughed twice. "Although there was a little accident, you see, the branches are burning." Everyone. After a while, everyone wiped out all the wild boars, leaving only half a roast pig. Several people were already full. Hinata was the only one left, and her eyes widened when she saw the remaining half of the roasted pig. But when she saw that everyone seemed to be full, she swallowed her saliva and did not propose to roast the remaining pig. Idea. However, how could Fungin not know her little thoughts? She is a woman who can set a record for the biggest Ichiraku ramen eater. No wonder she doesn't seem to have grown up. It must be because she doesn't eat well, which suppresses her growth. But with so many people here, it's not okay to say that a girl has eaten 4 pigs and is not full. Danger. Fungin almost asked Hinata if she was still hungry without thinking. "Teacher Hong, let's bake this half too, shall we?" Yuhi Hong wiped the oil from her mouth and waved her hand. "Teacher, I can't eat any more." Fungin looked at Inuzuka Kiba again. Tooth. Inuzuka Kiba didn't answer, but first asked Akamaru, who was lying in his arms, "Akamaru, do you still eat?" "Woof woof." Akamaru shook his head. Inuzuka Kiba lay back in a big letter shape and said, "I can't eat any more, can you still eat it?" "Well, I'm not full yet." Fungin said nonsense without blushing or heartbeat. Inuzuka Kiba looked at Fungin's bulging belly. "Are you sure you're not kidding?" Fungin turned around. "Hinata." Hinata hesitated for a long time and said, "I'm not hungry, you can eat." Fungin nodded and said to everyone, "Then I'll bake it myself and eat it. You guys should go back first. It's getting late. Don't hold yourself up to death." Inuzuka Kiba stood up and stared at his bulging belly, rolling his eyes at him. It was already very late, and everyone had already wanted to leave, but no one took the initiative. Yuhi Hong also patted the dirt on her body. "Then we really leave, don't you need us to stay with you for a while?" Fungin blinked and looked at Yuhi Hong. "Teacher, you can stay with me if you want." Feeling his hot gaze, Yuhi Hong glared at him. "You can just feed the wolves here." After saying that, he jumped slightly and jumped away. Seeing that Fungin was really roasting again, Inuzuka Kiba no longer stayed too much. "Fungin, I'm leaving first. Hinata, please stop accompanying him. It will probably take a long time for him to finish eating." Hinata nodded, but made no physical intention to leave. She just stood up and walked around in place. After everyone had left, Fungin raised the corner of his mouth. "It will be ready soon, Hinata, come here quickly." Then several more handfuls of firewood were added to make the fire even more intense. He just said that he was very hungry. If I were with him, he would not be able to eat enough. Hinata reluctantly looked away from the roasted pig. "I'm not hungry. I'll stay with you for a while and then go back." "But Hinata, the saliva at the corner of your mouth." Hinata was startled and quickly wiped the corners of her mouth with her hand. Question mark. It obviously didn't leak out. Seeing Hinata's cute appearance, Fungin smiled and said, "I lied to you." Then he patted his bulging belly again. "I'm really full. This half pig is roasted specially for you." Hinata sat down next to Fungin dubiously. He slowly stretched out his little hand, placed it on Fungin's belly and rubbed it, and then realized that Fungin had not lied to him. "Thank you, no thanks, no. Hinata's face became even redder. She subconsciously wanted to say thank you, but suddenly she thought that Fungin didn't like her always saying thank you to him, which made her speech incoherent and she didn't know what she was going to say. Seeing Hinata like this, Fungin burst into laughter. "I know what Hinata means." He put his hands on Hinata's cheeks and slowly raised her lowered head. Her beautiful eyes twitched slightly, and her white pupils, set off by the moonlight, were as clear and bright as the starry sky, making people reluctant to look away. She also stared at Feng An's face. In addition to her unique red hair, Feng An also had a handsome face. Under the shining of the moonlight, Feng An, who was only 13 years old, already showed off her heaven-defying appearance. Is this okay? We are already friends, so this should be okay. Being held by Feng An, Hinata's heart was beating like a deer, and she could feel the hot feeling on her face still rising. At this moment, Shino's voice suddenly came from the side. Actually, I haven't left yet. Hearing this, Hinata exclaimed, turned around quickly, and buried her red face deeply into her chest. At this time, she only felt her body temperature rising rapidly. Shino saw it. Wow, what am I doing? Aburame Shino adjusted the sunglasses on his face with one hand and said calmly, it's okay, you don't need to pay attention to me. Don't worry about your sister, you did it on purpose, right? Feng An seriously suspected that both Shino and Ya were bribed by the yellow-haired boy and came to cause trouble. I'm leaving. Hinata, be careful, there are bad guys in our team. After finishing speaking, Aburame Shino took a roasted pig's trotter and fed it to the bugs in his body, then left. Hinata nodded. Okay, okay. Seeing her nodding, Feng An rolled his eyes at her and said, are you stupid? He means that I am a bad person. Hinata whispered, I'm not stupid. I know you are the bad guy. She didn't say the second half. Not stupid. I feel like even if I sell you, you are the kind of fool who will help me bargain with the kidnappers. Hinata lowered her head and looked up at him. I'm really not stupid. Feng An saw her clear and stupid eyes and stopped delving into this topic. The roasted pig is ready, you can eat it quickly. With Feng An's agreement, Hinata was no longer polite. Her stomach had been anxious for a long time. In a blink of an eye, a roast pig half the size of Feng An entered Hinata's belly. Looking at Hinata's still unchanged belly, Feng An even suspected that it was Doraemon's fourth-dimensional pocket. Let me see what it's made of. As he said that, Feng An's restless hand was about to touch Hinata's belly. Hinata hurriedly ran away and whispered, Shino is right, there are bad people in the team. It was clear that she had touched her belly just now, but she didn't let him touch it. An example of how only state officials are allowed to set fires, but the people are not allowed to light lamps. He looked at the sky, it was already very late, and straightened his expression. Hinata, let me take you back. Okay. Feng An dusted himself off, put out the fire, and then accompanied Hinata through the woods and walked to Hyuga's house. When passing by the night market, Hinata pulled Feng into the shop that was still closed. I bought a glass of juice for myself and Feng An. Originally, Feng An wanted to pay for it himself, but under Hinata's strong request, he still compromised. Once Hinata uses his trump card and looks at Feng An with aggrieved eyes, he will feel that he really deserves to die. Feng An, who originally wanted to take advantage of Hinata, was already held by Hinata unknowingly. The two walked side by side in the alleys of Konoha, the street lights stretching their figures. Not long after, we came to an old-fashioned courtyard. Hinata pushed it but didn't push it open. It must have been locked from the inside. Didn't Uncle leave the door open for you? It's probably too late, I think I won't go back. We have obviously agreed with my father to leave me a door at the class party in the evening. Is my father angry with me again because he sees me coming back so late? What a God-given opportunity. Feng An felt happy. Uncle Hyuga, I can't blame you for this. Hinata glanced sideways and saw a scary smirk on his face. What are you thinking about? Feng An immediately straightened his expression and said seriously, it's okay, I was thinking, in that case, just sleep at my house. My bed is quite big. You can't do this, we are just friends. Hinata covered her eyes with her hands and said shyly. Hearing this, Feng An was shocked. No, although I am what you are thinking, those thoughts should not appear in your thoughts. When Hinata saw Feng An not speaking, she thought he was angry, so she explained in a low voice, we are still too young, at least wait until we are 16. The speed of the car is too fast, and Feng An's horsepower can't keep up. Is this the storyline of an ignorant young lady in adolescence falling in love with me? He glanced at Hinata subconsciously and couldn't help but uttered, not too young. Compared to little Sakura, Hinata's current level is already very heaven-defying, enough to make it beyond the reach of many people. At this time, With a creak, the door suddenly opened from the inside. No, if her father sees his precious daughter staying out so late with a boy, then I will be dead. Fungin quickly shrank behind Shidunzi. However, it was not Hinata's father Hyuga Hiashi who came out, but Hinata's sister Hyuga Hanabi. Hyuga Hanabi's cheeks were bulging as he scolded, "You bad guy, molesting my sister at the front door." Hinata said shyly, "He didn't tease me." Seeing her sister speaking for the bad guys, Hanabi stamped her feet angrily. "Humph, if my sister doesn't come in, then I'll lock the door." Hinata clasped her hands together and placed them on her chest, looking hesitantly at where Fungin was hiding. Fungin stood up and said with a smile, "Go back quickly." "I'm kidding you. My bed is actually not big. It's a hard bed. You're not used to it." Seeing Hinata's guilty look, he would have wanted to hug her into his arms if it weren't for this at Hyuga's gate. "Silly and cute. Go back, I'm going back too, see you tomorrow." Fungin waved and left with his hands in his pockets. He knew that if he didn't say goodbye first, the idiot who always prioritizes others would just stay in a stalemate with him for a while. "See you tomorrow." Hinata looked at his retreating figure dreamingly until he disappeared. "I'm so angry." Hyuga Hanabi's face was bulging with anger, and he used his hands and feet to show his anger. "Sister, the red-haired bad guys are gone." After saying that, Hyuga Hanabi ran to the back room and ignored Hinata. She felt that her gentle sister was going to be snatched away by the red-haired villain, and she was very angry. "Sister can only be mine." Red-haired villain. Seeing that Fungin was completely gone, Hinata entered the house and carefully bolted the door. He tiptoed toward the back room. "Hinata." A strong voice came from a man's mouth. Hinata quickly walked over with her head lowered. "Father." "I saw a man sitting in the aisle with his arms folded in front of him. He seemed to have been sitting there for a long time. The man is none other than Hinata's father, Hyuga Hiashi. The young man just now must be Fungin." Hinata nodded. "Yes." It turns out that Hyuga Hiashi had already opened his Byakugan and seen everything just now. Fortunately, Fungin did not take action, otherwise Hyuga Hiashi would have been unable to help but rush out to kill him. Hyuga Hiashi held Hinata in his arms and said, "I understand that you have a crush on him because he saved you when you were a child. But you are my Hyuga Hiashi's daughter. It is on your shoulders to support the future of the Hyuga clan. He is not the most suitable candidate for you." When Hinata was teased as a white-eyed monster when she was a child, the red-haired Maplin, who had been waiting on a tree for a long time, jumped down from the tree and easily drove away those little boys with bad mouths. That scene also touched her deeply. It was engraved in Hinata's mind. Hinata got out of his arms, raised her fair face, looked at Hyuga Hiashi, and then quickly glanced away. "Father, Brother Neji is so good, why can't we put our hope in him? You are the clan, Neji is the branch house, and the branch house exists to protect the clan." Hyuga Hiashi seemed a little angry. He stood up and threw his sleeves behind his back. When turning to leave, Hyuga Hiashi sighed, "This is the way of survival for our Hyuga clan. In short, you and Fungin should reduce your contact. I'm sorry, this time I won't listen to your arrangements, father." Hinata's eyes were red, but she walked towards her room with determination. She doesn't understand how important Hyuga Hiashi's so-called family glory and family future are. She knows clearly that her brother Neji has been extremely talented since he was a child, but her talent is average. No matter how hard she works, she can't catch up with brother Neji. But fate caused her to be born into the Hyuga clan, and she has lived with the identity of the Hyuga heir since she was a child. Hearing what Hinata said, Hyuga Hiashi clenched his fists, with a look of sternness and intolerance on his face. Before this, Hyuga Hiashi had already wanted to train Hyuga Hanabi, who was more talented, as his heir. But now that he saw Hinata's behavior, he was more determined to make Hanabi the heir to the Hyuga family. If Hinata can be more tenacious, even if her talent is not that outstanding, Hiashi will not choose to be young rather than mature. But that boy's red hair, is he an orphan of the Uzumaki lineage? Now, the Uzumaki lineage is still not qualified. On the other side, Fungin has returned to his small house. He did not fall asleep immediately, but refined the fire and earth chakras in the cells of his body and introduced them to the dantian to blend with each other. As the two strands of the same blue chakra at his dantian slowly rotated, a small vortex suddenly appeared. The fusion of the two chakras seems to produce new chakra attribute changes, but only a trace, and they will dissipate once you try to invoke the two chakras formed by the fusion of fire and earth attributes. Sure enough, it still failed. Fangen has been conducting such research for 2.5 years, but has yet to achieve substantial results. The experiments he conducted were in pursuit of the limits of blood inheritance that could be achieved in theory, but in fact, successful cases could only be achieved through blood inheritance. But he always felt that as long as he had the corresponding chakra attributes, it would be possible to master the limits of blood inheritance and even eliminate blood inheritance. He tried countless times and simulated fusion and other situations after being released, but they all failed. One time, he had a sudden idea. Using acupuncture points on the body, what would happen if two attributes of chakra blended with each other? After a lot of experiments, he found that this can really give birth to new chakra attribute changes. The only pity is that he has not yet succeeded in leaving the produced nature transformation. After several years of experiments, he has developed a habit of doing it every day before going to bed. Today is probably the most tiring day I've had in years. But it's definitely enriched a lot. If it were him in the past, he would basically spend his whole day wandering around and looking at the scenery. Fangen took a shower, lay on the bed, and soon fell asleep. The next day, everyone in Class 8 plus Fangen is training at the training ground. Yuhi Hong pointed out their problems and asked them to train according to their weaknesses during training. After arranging a few people, Yuhi Hong looked at Fangen. In yesterday's mission, Fangen was the only one who didn't see anything that could improve his training. Go and play by yourself. Fangen said dissatisfied. I have called you Teacher Hong for a day, and you are just perfunctory with me. Yuhi Hong knelt down, smiled and pinched his little cheek. I'm not good at powerful ninjutsu that suits you. Can you learn genjutsu? Study. Okay, then come with me here. Yuhi Hong walked in front, and Fangen followed behind. He didn't notice the movements of Yuhi Hong's hands at this time. Let's see how long it takes for you to wake up. You can't achieve certain attainments in illusion simply by practicing. Magic Narukumi technique. Fangen was walking, and suddenly found that Yuhi Hong in front of her eyes was gone. Where's Teacher Hong? He scratched his head and looked back to find that Hinata and Inuzuka Kiba were also gone. What happened? Just as he walked forward for an unknown distance, as the white light flashed in front of him, a seductive picture came into his mind. They were a group of women, all of whom were beauties without exception, and he basically knew their names. Hinata, Yuhi Hong, Tenten, Tsunade, Konan, Chio, Terumime, Tamari, Makoto, made him dazzled. He swallowed hard. Different from usual, they took off their ninja costumes and wore swimsuits of various colors. At first glance, everything was covered with white flowers. He had never seen such a shocking scene. As the sentient ninja among them discovered his presence, they suddenly rushed over together. Several women like Hinata were so stupid when they ran that Fangen's eyes almost popped out. Lord Fangen, numb and sweet sounds came and went. This is where, did I enter heaven by mistake? Just when he opened his arms and was about to embrace them, Chio, who was running at the front and drooling, suddenly stopped him. Blood sprayed on his face. Before he could figure out what was going on, heaven suddenly turned into hell. All the female ninjas actually started fighting for him. No, not fighting, but fighting. Yuhi Hong, Tiantian, Tamari, Makoto, and not long after, the woman shouting Fangen's name was lying in a pool of blood. This is the real Shira field. Fangen only belongs to me, you don't want to share him with me. Only Hinata was left, covered in blood. She stood in a pool of blood, holding her hands in front of her chest, blinking shyly. Fangen, you only belong to me. Chapter 11. The next second, an ice crystal suddenly appeared in the air, and a masked ninja jumped out of it, holding a kunai, and swung it towards Hinata's neck. Next, Fangen saw the scene he was most afraid of. He shouted with splitting eyes, no. Hinata felt confused. Why is Fangen spinning? The ninja took off his mask, and Fangen could see clearly that the flawless face under the mask was by. He tilted his head and smiled. Fangen, I love you. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Fangen, who had a mental breakdown, saw his eyes darken and suddenly fainted. The scene stopped suddenly, and he lay straight on the ground. Fungin. Hearing his shout, everyone quickly stopped training and rushed here. Hinata, who arrived first, quickly opened her Byakugan to check his condition, and asked anxiously, "Teacher Hong, what happened to Fungin?" Yuri Hong rubbed her little face. "Don't worry, he will wake up soon." Sure enough, Fungin woke up not long after. His face was pale. After opening his eyes, he glanced around blankly and then regained his clarity. "It seems that I was under an illusion just now, it was really scary." "Fungin, are you awake?" Hinata lowered her head and looked at Fungin lying on her lap, showing a shy and excited expression. He looked up and saw that only Hinata's head was in his field of vision, and his whole body trembled and suddenly agitated. "The scene in the illusion just now is vivid in my mind." He gasped and quickly sat up from Hinata's lap pillow. When he first reincarnated, he thought about capturing all the beautiful women in this world. Since no one knew him, he could do whatever he wanted as a citizen of his motherland. But later I found out that it was not realistic, so I hid it in my heart. Unexpectedly, I was inspired by Yuhi Hong's illusion to directly transform into the Shira field in the harem. But even if I did, the gentle and kind-hearted Hinata wouldn't really treat me like that, right? Then after thinking about it for a moment, what the yandere-like Hinata said made her scalp tingle. This made him more determined, Hinata as his warm harbor. He slowly reached out and took Hinata's small hand. Hinata lowered her head shyly, but this time she did not take out her little hand, letting Fungin hold it. It was just the most basic psychic attack illusion. "You were immersed in it for so long. What did you see?" Yuhi Hong was a little curious. What kind of horrific scene did the kid in front of him see that made him sink for so long? People who fall victim to this trick usually collapse in the blink of an eye, but he was actually still immersed in it for a few seconds. "You really want to know?" Terrible Teacher Hong. Yuhi Hong nodded. He was just a kid, how could the terror in his heart scare him? Then Fungin motioned to Yuhi Hong to bring her ears closer. He leaned into her ear and whispered, "I saw Teacher Hong in her swimsuit." After saying that, he quickly grabbed Hinata's little hand and ran away together. Hinata's little hand was held by Fungin, and she became shy, so she had no choice but to lower her head and follow. Yuhi Hong was stunned for a moment, and then her expression changed. She never expected that the kid in front of her would say such a thing. "Stop it, you brat. You're so young and your mind is full of rubbish." Shihi Hong jumped up to the tree and chased Fungin. Yuhi Hong became more and more surprised as she chased after her. Whenever she speeded up, Fungin in front also speeded up. Jonin, couldn't catch up with him, and he was still dragging Hinata along with him. Yesterday, I judged that the opponent's speed was only faster than Chunin, but today it was faster than her Jonin, which was really terrifying. If she had a pair of white eyes, she would be able to see through the way the chakra flows in Fung'an's body at this time. Fung'an uses the Thunder Attribute Chakra to activate the cells of the body and greatly increase the body's movement speed. He was inspired by the nintaijutsu of the third Raikage and learned it by himself. His mastery of chakra is slightly insufficient. He can only activate his legs when speed is needed, but cannot activate the whole body cells to fully increase the body's limits like the third Raikage. Yuhi Hong hit her head. Wait a minute, I'm the only one who uses illusions, why do I have to compete with him here? Hoo-hoo. Fung'an looked back and found that Yuhi Hong's figure was no longer there. Have you given up? Magic tree binding killing. Just as he was muttering to himself, suddenly a thick tree emerged from where Fung'an was standing. Seeing this scene, Fung'an was shocked. How could he not know that he was under Yuri Hong's illusion? He saw a big tree protruding from the ground pushing him up. Before he could stand firm, several thick branches stretched out from the big tree trunk and fixed him tightly to the trunk. Are you still running? You just ran away by yourself, and you dragged Hinata with you. Yuhi Hong emerged from the tree trunk, landed in front of him, and rolled her eyes at him. Hinata, who was breathing heavily on the side, lowered his head when he heard this, and looked at Fung'an secretly with his eyes. Yes, why did Fung'an drag me along? Is it subconsciously, or? Thinking of this, her face turned even redder, she covered her face with her little hands, and ran and hid behind the tree. But what I said is all the truth. Fung'an helplessly spread his hands and took a step forward. The illusion tree behind him instantly dissipated. Shiri's red eyebrows twitched a bit. How did you untie it? It's solved just like that, Fungin said with a smile. The first time Naraku saw technique, he didn't realize that he was under an illusion, so he was immersed in it. This time, Kurenai Yuhi's magic tree binding kills the iconic big tree restraint. Compared with the mind attack type illusion, this kind of restraint types of illusions are easier to remove. You only need to disrupt the chakra in the body or use painful stimulation to cancel the genjutsu. Narakumi technique is definitely not something he can't unlock because he subconsciously wants to immerse himself in it. You kid is really hard to see through. Yuhi Hong also couldn't figure out whether he had any talent for illusion. The most basic Narakumi technique was immersed in it for so long before he woke up, and his ultimate move was easily resolved by him. However, she was merciful. If the enemy was hit by the magic tree, Yuhi Hong would kill the enemy when she emerged from the tree trunk. Teacher Hong, can you teach me genjutsu? Fungin has only 2 of the 7 attributes of chakra that he has not yet mastered the related ninjutsu. One is yin attribute and the other is yang attribute. The most intuitive way to use the yin attribute chakra transformation is through illusion. Illusion is very practical in actual combat. He also thought about exploring it on his own, but without Sharingan, exploring illusion on his own would be like a blind man trying to figure out an elephant. Now that there is Kurenai Yuhi, who is known as the master of illusions, there is no harm in learning one more. Soon, the Chunin exam will begin. Only by taking more measures can we better protect ourselves in Hinata. Shihi Hong smiled and said, students are eager to learn, why does the teacher not teach? But genjutsu is a special nature transformation ninjutsu. It is very different from other conventional and more intuitive ninjutsu. Yuhi Hong took out a small scroll and handed it to Fungin. Fungin took the scroll that was only the size of his arm. After opening it, you can see the recorded Kasumi servant technique and genjutsu Narakumi technique. He asked in confusion, why are there only 2 ninjutsu? It's still D-level learning difficulty. Yuhi Hong walked in front and said calmly, although there are only 2 D levels, it will be difficult for you to touch the threshold in a week. What if I master both in 1 week? Kurenai Yuhi smiled. I'll give you 2 weeks. As long as you can master one kind of illusion, let alone teach you more difficult illusions, it will be fine even if I recommend you to Mr. Hokage to enter Anbu. As Yuhi Hong is extremely talented in illusions, it still took her a full month to master the simplest D-level illusion. A genin who has never been exposed to genjutsu, is it useless to talk about mastering genjutsu in a week? It's not that she doesn't believe it, but she thinks it's impossible. Just recommend Anbu. Maple Anbu didn't want to join Anbu as the executioner of Hokage, not to mention that he still clearly remembered that in the plot of Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo were secretly developing first-generation cells. Sarutobi Hiruzen was just saying stop on the surface, but behind the scenes Danzo was doing all these things. As a Hokage, how could he not know it all? Yuhi Hong raised her eyebrows. Many people want to enter but are not qualified. Fungin spread his hands and expressed that he was really not interested. Can I exchange it for a reward? Teacher Hong. Yuhi Hong chuckled and said, haha, of course, if you really do it, you can mention it yourself. In her opinion, it was impossible for Fungin to complete it, and it was meaningless no matter how big the stakes were, so she didn't even think about the punishment if Fungin couldn't do it. I can carry it myself. Can anything be done? Fung An's eyes lit up, and he suddenly thought of the swimsuit worn by Yuhi Hong in the illusion. Yuhi Hong glanced at him with disdain. I know what you are thinking, don't think about it. He pouted and muttered, I didn't say anything. Yuhi Hong ignored him and went to the others. Fungin no longer wasted time, sat down on the spot, opened the scroll, and carefully understood the ninjutsu on it. Kasumi servant technique. A black and lacquered shadow appears. The shadow will split every time it is attacked. It is a D-level primary illusion. The magical Narakumi technique uses the fears that everyone has in their hearts to materialize them, causing people to subconsciously think of them as reality, allowing the opponent to see the most feared scene in their hearts. It is a D-level elementary illusion. This is probably what Hong used before. Even after so long, he still had palpitations when thinking of the real scene. As he read and understood, his eyes lit up. That's how it is. Illusion requires the use of the yin chakra in the body to circulate to the function point to enhance the mental power of the caster, thereby realizing the transformation of the illusion. Ninjutsu only needs to mobilize the chakra of the corresponding attribute. For example, fire-style Great Fireball technique only needs to transport the fire attribute chakra in the body to the throat, and then combine it with the seal and spray it out. Accurate operation of chakra into the function point is the high wall that prevents most people from mastering illusions. But Feng'an only felt happy. Because this is very different in principle from his usual method of studying blood inheritance limits. Is it running to function point? Feng'an pressed his hand on the back of his neck, feeling the location of function point, while running the chakra in his body to collect here. Z, Hai, Cho, Yu, Wu, Yu. At the same time, his hands changed rapidly according to the prints on the book. With the influx of yin chakra, he suddenly felt that his mind became ethereal and clear. What a wonderful feeling. At this moment, he unconsciously mobilized the yang chakra to enter the function point. The yin and yang attributes are suddenly blended together, and a new chakra nature appears. Feng'an was shocked and her heartbeat accelerated. How did you do that? The chakra fusion he had been trying for many years seemed to be completed inexplicably and remained in the function cave. Yin attribute, yang attribute. The sun sets in the west. Feng'an, who was immersed in it, seemed to be in a strange state, completely unaware that 2 hours had passed. Yuhi Hong and others looked at him from a distance with worried faces and did not dare to disturb him. Teacher Hong, he has been like that for 4 hours, do you really don't need to wake him up? Hinata on the side rolled her eyes and looked at Feng'an worriedly. Inuzuka Kiba frowned and asked worriedly, Kenu-sensei, is it really okay? Yuhi Hong's face was solemn. Wait a little longer. All her attention is now on Feng'an. He remained motionless, as if in a state of trance, for 4 hours. This is also the first time she has seen someone fall into this state when learning illusions. In the history of the ninja world, there have been situations where ninjas used genjutsu on themselves and were unable to solve it, and were eventually killed by their own genjutsu. However, Feng'an's breathing was stable and there was no sign of being affected by the genjutsu. It was obvious that Feng'an's situation was not like this. It's just that Yuhi Hong's intuition told her that Feng'an's current state was not a bad thing. At this time, Feng'an was extremely excited, and his many years of attempts seemed to have unintentionally taken direction today. He discovered that the prerequisite for the blending of chakra, the two attributes of yin and yang, is natural energy. Using natural energy to achieve neutralization, the chakra of the two attributes of yin and yang can be integrated into one, producing new chakra changes. Have you reached your limit? Feng'an, who had reached the limit of chakra consumption, slowly opened his eyes and murmured to himself. Within 4 hours, he found that he seemed to have double the mental power compared to ordinary people. While the yin chakra continued to be introduced into the function point, he could vaguely perceive the natural energy in the ninja world, but the chakra continued to be introduced. It also made him gradually tired, and his mental energy was doubled. He stood up, placed his hand on the big tree next to him, and activated the yin and yang power of function point. A 3-centimeter hole penetrated the tree trunk, and the 4 walls of the hole appeared withered. The destructive power of yin-yang dun is indeed very strong. Feng'an frowned. He just mobilized the power of yin and yang on his fingers, without applying any ninjutsu, to achieve such an amazing effect. If this power of yin-yang escape was injected into ninjutsu, Third Raikage, known as the strongest body, would probably have no choice but to avoid its sharp edges and dodge away. Unfortunately, there is too little natural energy in the ninja world and the conversion efficiency is extremely low, so it is not applicable for the time being. Feng'an felt that there was only a little bit of yin and yang power in his body, shook his head and sighed. At this time, Yuhi Hong and others came over. Yuhi Hong asked, "What happened to you before?" Feng'an scratched his head and smiled. "I accidentally got immersed in learning illusions." Inuzuka Kiba said with disbelief, "Hey, are you lying too much?" Not only Ya didn't believe it, but Yuhi Hong and others didn't believe what he said. "You are usually a sleeper in school, but you told me that you are addicted to studying and can't extricate yourself." Feng'an smiled awkwardly and did not answer. "Would you like something to eat? I made a bento for you." Hinata took a step forward, shyly, and handed him a purple rectangular lunch box. Fangin was stunned, his heart seemed to be touched by the shy girl in front of him. This was the first time someone had brought him food, and the feeling of being remembered gave him an indescribable sense of happiness. He watched Hinata's outstretched hands trembling slightly in front of him, and he quickly took the lunchbox and took a step forward. Ignoring the gazes of others, he pressed his forehead against Hinata's. Sorry, Hinata. Feeling the warmth on her forehead, Hinata lowered her eyes shyly and looked at the ground, holding the corners of her clothes tightly with her two small hands. Teacher Hong and the others are watching. Fangin said in a gentle tone, it doesn't matter, just treat them like cabbage. Teacher Hong, look at them. They are getting more and more excessive. Inuzuka Kiba jumped up angrily. This is a great harm to him as a single man. Didn't you listen to what Fangin said? We are Chinese cabbage. Let's go. Dabayakai number 2. Shihi Hong smiled like an ant and took the initiative to make room for Fangin and Fangin. Fangin, I want to find a partner too. Inuzuka Kiba glared at the two of them being intimate and left angrily. Yuhi Hong, who was walking in front, suddenly thought of something and shouted, no. 3. Dabayakai, don't leave yet. Have you been noticed? Aburame Shino put his hands in his pockets and walked out from behind the tree calmly, with no change in his face. After everyone left, the two of them still kept their foreheads touching their foreheads. The two could clearly feel each other's breathing. Hinata whispered, the rice will get cold. Well, I understand. Fangin separated from Hinata's forehead with some reluctance. Since he traveled to the ninja world, this is the first time that he has a real sense of belonging to Hinata. For the past 13 years, he has been like an orphan wandering in the field, with no sense of belonging, so much so that he knows the plot very well but has never tried to change anything or gain benefits from it. The two of them sat together, leaning on the big tree. Hinata blushed and adjusted the bangs on her forehead, then moved slightly towards Fangin. It's just that her movements were very slow, a little shy, and she was afraid of affecting Fangin's meal. Fangin had already noticed her little movements. How silly. He took the initiative and leaned in Hinata's direction. Feeling his movements, Hinata hugged her legs and buried her face in her chest shyly. In the quiet environment, her heartbeat was clearly audible like a deer's beating. Fangin ate the bento Hinata made for him. In fact, he was not as calm as he appeared, he was just pretending to be calm, and he didn't even feel anything when he swallowed the vegetables he disliked most. Seeing him wolfing down the food, Hinata asked shyly, is it delicious? Delicious, very delicious. It's great that it suits your taste. I was worried that you wouldn't like it. If you like to eat it, I'll make it for you next time. Hinata's face buried lower and lower. Is it normal for good friends to cook together? Will it make it difficult for Fangin to do this? In her understanding, she must be over 16 years old to fall in love. Now she can only be good friends with Fangin. Fangin said while eating, I don't have any special preferences. If I really want to say it, tomato scrambled eggs would count as one. As for the food eaten in the ninja world, he didn't particularly like it. The only thing he liked was tomato scrambled eggs. Maybe it was because he was nostalgic for his past life. Okay, next time I will make tomato scrambled eggs. Hearing Hinata's serious tone, Fangin said with some distress, Fool, you should rest more when you have time. It's okay, I'm very skilled at it. It won't take long to make bento. Then if you have a chance, call me and I'll help you. Okay, Hinata just responded, then remembered her father's words. Her eyes dimmed. It's better not to use it, my father is very strict. Fangin took the last bite and closed the lunch box. Don't hit the smiling man with your hands. Next time I bring a gift, your father will be embarrassed to hit me. But Hinata couldn't say anything about Hyuga Hiyashi's disapproval of her close relationship with Fangin. She didn't want Fangin and her father to be on opposite sides. Do not worry. Fangin smiled and rubbed her head. He found that he liked rubbing her hair more and more. Compared to his own rough hair, Hinata's hair felt surprisingly good. After Hinata carefully put away the lunch box, the two leaned together in silence. Fangin, who was too mentally exhausted, soon fell asleep on Hinata's shoulder. Hinata noticed, but didn't dare to move for fear of waking him up. In this way, Hinata continued to remain motionless. I do not know how long it has been. Fangin's head slipped from Hinata's shoulder. The heavy feeling in his head woke him up immediately. Did I fall asleep? He looked around, and at some point, the sky had become dark. Then I noticed that Hinata next to me seemed to be asleep as well. It's just that her posture looked very uncomfortable. She hugged her legs with her hands and clasped them together. Logically speaking, she would subconsciously loosen her clasped hands when she fell asleep. But she didn't. Even if she fell asleep, her hands seemed to be still exerting force. Fungin saw the red mark on Hinata's shoulder and remembered that he fell asleep leaning on Hinata's shoulder. No wonder he slept so soundly. Presumably she clasped her hands tightly just to prevent herself from being woken up, right? I'm so good. He slapped his forehead violently, feeling annoyed. Are you awake? Hinata rubbed her groggy eyes and looked at Fungin. Seeing that she was woken up by him again, Fungin felt even more guilty. Come up. He took a step forward and squatted in front of Hinata. Hinata, who had just woken up, was still a little confused. She didn't know what he was going to do. At this time, Fungin grabbed her little hand and put it on his shoulder, and stood up suddenly. Hinata lay on his back like a koala. Fungin groped backwards again, grabbed her ankles and clamped them on both sides of him, and then grabbed her calves. At this time, Hinata suddenly woke up and her face turned red instantly. Fungin, what are you doing? Send you home. Put me down, okay. I can leave by myself. No. Fungin carried her away and walked away. No matter how Hinata swayed and struggled, he would not let go. He likes Hinata's gentleness and kindness, but at the same time, he doesn't like Hinata's character of catering to others and putting himself in trouble. He didn't want to see her efforts always go unrewarded. Even if she didn't need it, he would do it. Hinata. Well, what's wrong? Blushing, Hinata stopped struggling and moved her body up a little, which would make Fungin feel more relaxed. Don't care too much about others, just be yourself, okay? Fungin, who was walking on the road, had firm eyes. He knew that Hinata's temperament was difficult to change easily, but he had decided to help her change more or less. At least make her feel confident. Since it was not too late now, there were still many pedestrians in the alley. Fungin was walking in the alley carrying Hinata, and soon attracted countless eyes. Hinata buried her head against his neck and whispered, "Put me down, there are many people looking at us." "It doesn't matter, I'll find a way where no one is." Fungin jumped up with his legs, landed on the surrounding houses, and headed straight towards Hyuga's house. "This way more people will notice it." Fungin smiled and said, "But they don't know who we are." "It seems to make sense." Hinata's mouth curved slightly, with a smile, and she hugged Fungin tightly. After Fungin jumped away, a man's cursing voice came from behind. "That fool is jumping up and down on the house again. The ashes fell into my soup. Forget it, it must be Master Hokage's deployment to carry out the mission." A young woman grabbed the cursing man. The man looked unhappy and cursed. "What's wrong with Hokage? What I'm scolding is Hokage." It can be seen that the ninja is jumping up and down on the roof, not once or twice anymore. The man has deep grudges and has bottomed out. "Oh, you are really my ancestor." The woman quickly covered his mouth and pulled him into the house, fearing that others would hear her. Half an hour later, Fungin arrived at the door of Hyuga's house carrying Hinata on his back. Crunch. Hyuga Hanabi just opened the door and came out, startling Fungin, and quickly put Hinata down. "What are you doing?" Hyuga Hanabi pouted and questioned the two of them. When she opened the door just now, she noticed the frantic movements of the two of them. At this moment, she seriously suspected that the two of them were doing something shameful. Fungin glared at her. "Little girl, you scared me." "It's okay, Hanabi, you go in first." Hinata pushed Hyuga Hanabi back through the door. Hyuga Hanabi was too small and didn't want to go in, so she was easily picked up by Hinata. Her eyes suddenly lit up and she said with a wicked smile, "Sister, you don't want the red-haired villain to be discovered by Dad, do you?" Upon hearing this, Hinata immediately covered her mouth and signaled her not to tell her father, Hyuga Hiashi. If her father knew that the two were still dating, Feng Anping would be in trouble given how strict her father was. Hyuga Hanabi took off the hand that was covering his mouth. "It's okay not to tell Dad. Sister, just answer me a question." "Okay, just ask." Hinata agreed without hesitation. However, Hyuga Hanabi asked a question that short-circuited her brain. Hyuga Hanabi leaned close to her ear and asked in a low voice, "Is my sister in love with the red-haired bad guy?" Hinata's face instantly turned red and she shook her head quickly. No. Hyuga Hanabi's face became round and round. Sister is lying. I'm going to tell Dad about the red-haired villain. When she turned around, Fungin Shunpo stepped forward, grabbed the back of her neck, and lifted her from the door. Who are you calling the red-haired villain? Humph, you are the only red-haired person here, who else can be there besides you? It's not polite to call me brother. Fungin gently pulled her fleshy little face. Hyuga Hanabi bared his teeth and shouted, "Sister, save me." Fungin said with a smile, "Now you know how to call sister to save you. Didn't you just file a lawsuit against sister?" Hinata came over and said, "Fungin, she won't really tell the truth. The relationship between her and Hanabi's sisters is usually very good, but Hyuga Hiashi will let them duel each other, but it has no impact on the relationship between the two." Fungin stopped bullying Hyuga Hanabi and put her on the ground. "It was your sister who saved you. If it were someone else, if you didn't call me brother today, I would never let you go." After Hyuga Hanabi came down, he kicked him in the leg. Fungin easily dodged it and at the same time gave her a blow to the head. Ouch! Hyuga Hanabi covered her forehead and ran behind Hinata with tears in her eyes. "Bad guy, aren't you leaving yet?" Fungin smiled and stretched out his left hand in a gesture that made his brain collapse, and knocked it in the air. Hanabi was so frightened that she quickly shrank her head. "Hanabi, who's out there?" Hyuga Hiashi's voice came. When the three of them heard this, they were all shocked. The next second, Hyuga Hiashi had already stepped out of the threshold. Before he could speak first, Fungin, who had no time to slip away, spoke first. "Hello uncle, it's so late, is uncle still awake? Can I sleep with you here? Can I sleep? My precious daughter is going to be cheated away, I'm going to sleep with you like a big watermelon." He thought so in his heart, but there was no change in his expression. Hyuga Hiashi said calmly, "Are you Fungin? I heard that no teacher is willing to take you. By asking such a pointed question, it seems that I have left a very bad impression on my future father-in-law. You have to find a way to eliminate the bad impression." Fungin straightened his expression. "Yes before, but now teacher Hong takes me to train with class 8. Hyuga Hiashi nodded. "I see. No wonder Hinata is with the boy every day, it turns out they are in the same class. No, I'm going to find Yuhi Hong tomorrow and ask her to kick this guy out. If this continues, it will be too late for the two of them to really develop feelings for each other. As a crane tail, I will use my identity as the leader of the Hyuga clan to exert a little pressure, and Hong will definitely agree, and then arrange this kid to other Jonin so that Hinata will not worry about him." Hinata watched the two talking silently without interrupting. Last time, Hyuga Hiashi made it clear that he did not want her to associate with Fungin. Although she made her attitude clear last time, her father Hyuga Hiashi found out so quickly that she was still a little panicked and didn't know what to do. Hyuga Hanabi on the side noticed Hinata's state. She stood on tiptoes and leaned into Hinata's ear. "It's okay, sister, Dad will never make things difficult for the red-haired villain." Hinata bit her lip, hoping so. Fungin scratched his head. "Uncle, I'll leave first. Go away quickly, if you stay for one more minute, my daughter will be in danger for one more minute." Hyuga Hiashi nodded and forced out a kind smile. "Okay, bye." Fungin waved in Hinata's direction. "Hinata, I'm leaving, see you tomorrow." "Ah, okay, see you tomorrow Fungin." Hinata, who was thinking about something, was a little distracted and raised her little hand. However, seeing Hyuga Hiashi squinting at her, she put down the hand she wanted to wave. Then the three of them walked into the house and sat on the floor. The room was so quiet that you could hear the slight breathing of the three people. "The situation is not good and it doesn't have much to do with me. I'll run away." Hyuga Hanabi moved his body and tried to slip away. Just as she moved half a minute, Hyuga Hiashi's words came. "Hanabi, what did sister do outside just now?" Hyuga Hanabi pouted. Obviously it was none of my business, but he still wanted to put me in the middle, with his doting sister on one side and his strict father on the other. Even if she didn't look back, she could still feel Hinata's hot gaze. Hyuga Hanabi cursed Fungin secretly in his heart. It's all the red-haired villain's fault. On the other side, Fungin returned home and couldn't wait to continue the day's discoveries. As he mobilized the yin attribute chakra to the function point, he entered a transparent state again. Start absorbing natural energy to neutralize the blend of yin and yang. This time it didn't last long, and he took the initiative to exit the state in just an hour. Why is the natural energy so rare in the ninja world? Is it possible that we really have to look for the land of immortals to absorb a large amount of natural energy? Fungin didn't want to go to the 3 great immortal lands. It wasn't that he didn't want to learn the magic of immortality, but that toad was as big as a human and was slimy. Just thinking about it made him feel restless. The other 2 wet bone forests and Raichi Cave Hokage were poorly introduced in the world view, and he had no idea where these 2 places were. Going to Orochimaru. As soon as the idea came up, he gave up. Orochimaru and Danzo basically didn't do anything in the early stage. If they went alone, they would be locked in a petri dish. Otherwise, she would definitely plant a curse mark on me. It's rare to have a breakthrough in the blood inheritance limit. He doesn't want to give up just like that, but now he can only give up first. He spent another half an hour studying the illusions on the scroll before choosing to fall asleep. Early in the morning, before the sky was completely clear, the door of Hyuga's house was pushed open. Hyuga Hiashi left in a hurry with big dark circles under his eyes. Because of Fungin, he didn't sleep well all night. As soon as he fell asleep, he would dream about his daughter Hinata and Fungin flirting every day. Especially since the 2 of them had to talk to each other half-heartedly. Fortunately, every time at this time, Hyuga Hiashi would wake up. He couldn't wait any longer, he had to let Yuhi Hong kick Fungin away. He was very fast, jumping up and down on the roof, choosing the shortest way to move forward in a straight line. Many people were awakened by the movement on the roof before they even got up. Needless to say, he knew it was the group of ninjas, and the people greeted his family with curses. But as long as Hyuga Hiashi moves too fast, the sound cannot enter his ears. Whoosh! Hyuga Hiashi jumped from the roof and came to Yuhi Hong's residence. Yuhi Hong, who was watering the flowers, felt someone coming to the door. She poked her head out of the window and saw Hyuga Hiashi standing there with anxiety written on his face. Yuhi Kurenai was a little confused. She knew that Hyuga Hiashi was the leader of the Hyuga clan, but they didn't have much interaction with each other. Why are you here? Hyuga Hiashi saw Yuhi Kurenai's head sticking out. He hurriedly stepped forward. Hong, I have something to tell you. As soon as he came closer, Yuhi Hong saw the dark circles on his eyes. Come in and talk. Yuhi Hong put down the watering can in her hand and opened the door. After coming in, Hyuga Hiashi didn't want to rest for a moment, and immediately said, Hong, can the student named Fungin be transferred to another small class? Yuhi Hong raised her eyebrows. She was still confused at first, but now she understood why Hyuga Hiashi came so early. As a parent, he is here to beat the Mandarin ducks. Senior, Fungin's situation is very special. I know that he has no teacher willing to take him. Don't worry, I can send an elite from our clan to teach him. Hyuga Hiashi thought that Yuhi Hong was thinking about the relationship between teacher and student, so he proposed that he would let his tribe help him. But he deliberately said it very vaguely, the elite of the clan, who knows whether the elite he was talking about was at the level of Jonin or Chunin. He thought that his sincerity was enough, because he had already inquired about Fungin, who was just a loser in school, with mediocre qualifications and no talent. However, Yuhi Hong just shook her head. Senior, you misunderstood. What I meant was that Fungin is a special being. In my opinion, he is worth cultivating. Hyuga Hiashi was startled. He never thought that he would be rejected. By giving up a crane tail, you can have a good relationship with the leader of the Hyuga clan, the strongest in Konoha. This kind of deal is a sure profit. He thought about it and felt that it was Yuhi Hong who saw what happened between Hinata and Fungin and predicted that he would come to her, so she was using excuses to get benefits. It can't be that Fungin is really talented, right? After thinking about it, Hyuga Hiashi calmed down a lot and raised the corner of his mouth. If she just wanted benefits, she could easily be satisfied with the foundation of the Hyuga clan. Afterwards, I will give you 1 million taels in my own name. Yuhi Hong frowned. What do you think I am? Not enough. Hyuga Hiashi said in a low voice, 2 million taels. In his opinion, The price was far beyond the expectation of spending for a crane tailgate, but for the sake of his daughter, he was willing to let himself lose some money. Yuhi Hong's soft eyes turned cold. I don't know where this junior misunderstood my senior, thinking that I am a person who sells students. Please go back. Hyuga Hiyashi's face was ashen. He didn't expect that the other party had such a big appetite. 2 million taels was not enough. Only S-level tasks can reach more than 1 million taels, and this is a task that can only be accepted by Cage level. Kurenai Yuhi has just been promoted to Jonin not long ago. Even if she is extremely powerful and can complete A-level tasks by herself. An A-level usually costs 150,000 taels. She still has to do a dozen tasks to earn 2 million taels. The danger and time cost of the task are also discarded here. Even if she were to do a B-level mission that usually costs 80,000 taels, she would have to spend more time, and the danger was self-evident. If she gave up high risks and pursued low profits, and did 30,000 taels of C-level tasks and 5,000 taels of D-level tasks, it would take about 3 months of continuous work to earn 2 million taels. He stood up suddenly and said in a cold voice, HMPH, people are so weak that they can swallow elephants like snakes. Is a useless student worth 2 million taels? Yuhi Kurenai knew that the other party was the leader of the Hyuga clan, so she always politely called him senpai, and did not want to antagonize him. But in Yuhi Hong's view, his behavior was an insult to herself. Yuhi Hong also stood up and said in a neither humble nor condescending manner, Fungin is the student I like. In my opinion, he is no worse than Hyuga Neji. Hyuga Neji has been dubbed the most talented boy of the Hyuga clan since he entered school. However, only the Hyuga clan knows what a big joke this is. Hyuga's reputation was actually made by the geniuses of the branch house. Hyuga Hiyashi looks ugly, and Hyuga Neji has always been a thorn in his heart. Although Hyuga Neji is a branch house, he also has to admit the other party's talent. How can a loser who barely graduated from a ninja school surpass Neji? In his opinion, this was just Yuhi Hong's excuse for her greed, but the excuse was too ridiculous. Kurenai Yuhi looked at him coldly and said, the trash in your mouth has learned the great fireball technique. It's just a C-level ninjutsu. It only shows that he works hard. Have you ever seen the newly graduated genin randomly release the great fireball technique with a diameter of 5 meters? Hyuga Hiyashi chuckled. So what if it's 5 meters? Wait. 5 meters in diameter. Hyuga Hiyashi's eyes widened. Being able to release a fireball with a diameter of 5 meters is enough to prove that the opponent has mastered the great fireball technique. Even the genius Uchiha Sasuke, who is as well known as Neji, has a hard time doing it. 5 meters is already Fungin's restraint. In fact, he can easily spit out a 10-meter fireball, and the chakra consumed is comparable to a drop in a bucket. Isn't he really a waste? Hyuga Hiyashi felt a little weird. Then why does he want to establish an image of being the tail end of a crane? Yuhi Hong also shook her head slightly. I don't know, maybe it's because of his personality. Hyuga Hiyashi's face was soothing. Sorry, I just misunderstood, and my tone was a bit harsh. Junior knows that you are eager to protect your daughter. Senior, don't worry, I won't let them do whatever they want. Seeing that the other party took the initiative to apologize, Yuhi Kurenai also gave the other party a step, and at the same time gave him a reassurance that she would take more care of Hinata. Whether he will take care of Hinata and the others afterward depends on Yuga Hiyashi's own mood, and it is impossible for Hyuga Hiyashi to take care of her. It's a lot of trouble. Hyuga Hiyashi turned and left. He now urgently needs to verify whether what Yuhi Hong said is true. He quickened his pace towards home. What Rua Hong said is true. Hyuga Hiyashi shouted anxiously as soon as he rushed home. Hinata, is Hinata up? Hinata, wearing black lining, poked her head out of the room. She wiped her wet hair with a towel. Father, are you looking for me? Hyuga Hiyashi walked up to her in one stride. Hinata, how do you feel about Fungin's daily life? Hinata was a little confused. Why does his father care about Fungin? Very, very good, handsome, and good at taking care of others. Stop it, Hyuga Hiyashi said with a black line on his face. Who asked you this? I mean you are usually in class 8 with him. How is his ability? Hinata suddenly understood and nodded. He is usually very diligent. Oh yes, he has mastered the sea-level ninjutsu Great Fireball technique. It seems that what Yuhi Kurenai said is true. Hyuga Hiashi nodded and said, is there anything else special about him? He's also very fast, I don't know about the rest. Okay, I get it. Hyuga Hiashi turned and left. Let's wait until the Chunin exam and see. He thought silently in his mind. He doesn't expect Fungin to surpass Neji, and as long as he performs better, he won't stop them anymore. After all, she is his daughter, and he can see that Hinata really likes him, and that boy Fungin doesn't seem to be a libertine, otherwise Hinata wouldn't have liked him for so long. He knew that Hinata's talent could no longer support the rise of the Hyuga clan, so he had to spend time cultivating her younger sister Hyuga Hanabi. Will the elders of the clan watch Hinata being with outsiders? In order to ensure that the Byakugan is not lost, the Hyuga clan has always had intermarriage within the clan. Hyuga Hiashi shook his head, not thinking about these distant things. If the elders of the clan are still afraid of losing Bayan's bloodline after Fungin shows his strength, even if his clan leader is inappropriate, he will let his daughter choose her own life. Time flies, and a week has passed in the blink of an eye. Fungin spent every day boringly in the task of catching thieves and finding cats and dogs that Yuhi Hong accepted. At the same time, he did not slack off in practicing illusions and chakra control. Today is also the last day of the bet between Fungin and Yuhi Hong. Have you really learned it? Hinata followed Fungin, and the two walked towards Yuhi Hong's house. Of course, otherwise wouldn't I be humiliating myself by looking for her? Hinata clenched her little hand into a fist to block the smile at the corner of her mouth. During this week, the two of them became closer and closer while doing tasks. Her father, Hyuga Hiashi, had not hindered their interactions since he asked Hinata about Fungin that day. The two of them arrived at Yuhi Hong's residence side by side. Fungin stepped forward and knocked on the door. Teacher Hong, I'm here to keep your appointment. But no one responded. Roll your eyes. Hinata opened her Byakugan and looked into the back room, finding no signs of chakra flowing in the room. She shook her head and said, Teacher Hong is not at home. Then where did she go? Fungin leaned against the wall, and the more he thought about it, the more something was wrong. He mastered 2 illusions within a week, but Yuhi Hong happened to give them a day off on the last day to let them have a good rest. Is Hong trying to cheat? No, I'm just squatting here today. I don't believe you won't go home at noon. On the other hand, Yuhi Kurenai was helplessly accepting Sarutobi Asuma's clumsy hospitality. She didn't believe that Fungin could master illusion within a week, so she forgot that today was the last day of the bet between her and Fungin. Kurenai Yuhi and Sarutobi Asuma were sitting in a shop. Sarutobi Asuma hurriedly carried several plates with fruit salad and some snacks on them. Yuhi Kurenai, on the other hand, held her pretty face with both hands and looked helplessly at Asuma's ugly appearance. Can't you just pick up one plate at a time? Yes, yes. After Asuma put the dinner plate on the table, he awkwardly put his hand on the back of his neck. Then he carefully pricked the apple pieces with toothpicks and handed them to Yuhi Kurenai. After Yuhi Hong opened her mouth and swallowed, she still rolled her eyes at him helplessly. Aren't you usually quite smart? As soon as I saw red, I couldn't think straight, Asuma responded. Hearing his words, Yuhi Hong's lips curled up, but she quickly suppressed them. If other people had said this, Hong would have thought it was glib, but she had known Asuma for a long time, and she naturally knew that the reason why a clumsy person like Asuma could say such things was because he was simply answering questions. Oh, I really don't know whether to call you stupid or dumb. Yuhi Hong sighed inwardly. However, every time Yumugoda occasionally enlightens her, it always makes her smile. On the other side, Fungin and Hinata squatted in front of Yuhi Hong's house. If Fungin doesn't leave, Hinata will naturally be here to accompany him. The two of them squatted in front of her house and had lunch. Fungin swallowed the eel rice with fierce eyes. It seemed that what he was swallowing was not the eel rice, but his dissatisfaction with Yuhi Kurenai. Slow down, you'll choke. At this moment, Fungin suddenly stopped what he was saying and quickly straightened his back. He literally choked. This is no wonder, Hinata. It is easier to choke when eating while squatting than sitting down. Hinata saw this and quickly handed over the water. At the same time, pat his back gently. Fungin straightened his back and drank a few sips of water before he recovered. He turned his head and looked at Hinata sincerely. Fortunately you are here, otherwise I would have died unjustly. Hinata shyly picked up the rice in her bowl, not meeting his eyes. After being almost stabbed to death by unagi rice this time, he attributed all his dissatisfaction and hatred to Yuhi Kurenai. I don't believe it, you won't come back at night. He had made up his mind that if she didn't come back by night, he would set her house on fire. Just after Fungin and the two had lunch, Yuhi Hong didn't wait. Instead, Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji from the 10th class arrived. Shikamaru stretched out his hand and greeted with a smile. Hey, Hinata, Fungin. What are you doing here? Fungin glanced at them, a little disappointed. Why are you here? We are waiting for teacher Hong here. Although Fungin always slept in the ninja school, it was precisely this that allowed him to establish deep revolutionary feelings with Naruto, Shikamaru and Choji, who were often punished to stand. Shikamaru. We happened to be passing by and saw that you looked familiar. Come and take a look. Akamichi Choji said casually while eating potato chips. Teacher Kurenai, didn't she go on a date with Mr. Asuma today? Hearing this, Fungin stood up suddenly. What did you say? She went on a date. Yes, Mr. Asuma said he has an important appointment today, so he gave us a day off. Don't you know? Hinata shook her head and said she didn't know. Fungin's face was gloomy, and he clenched and put down his fists. It turned out to be a date, no wonder we were suddenly asked to take a good rest. Co-authored by Yuhi Kurenai, she herself wants to rest. Shikamaru looked at him and asked, by the way, Fungin, why did you end up in Teacher Hong's team? It's a long story. Kaden told Shikamaru in an eloquent manner how Kurenai Yuhi hugged his thigh and begged him to join Class 8. Shikamaru put one hand on his chin, always pretending to be listening attentively, and nodding his head from time to time. However, the more Fungin spoke, the more outrageous he became. Why did he use a ninjutsu with a diameter of 10 meters to shock Yuhi Kurenai? If he didn't join in, Yuhi Kurenai would go on a hunger strike. Akamichi Choji turned to Shikamaru's ear. Do you really believe what he said? Is he bragging? Shikamaru covered his mouth and whispered. Be confident and remove the word, ba. He is just bragging. The two of them looked at Hinata, who lowered her head and said nothing and knew that Fungin was talking nonsense. What's more, they didn't believe that Yuhi Hong would beg him to join Class 8. When Fungin was giving a speech, he also caught a glimpse of Shikamaru's little moves. He coughed twice and said, ahem, that's it, I joined Class 8 out of mercy. That's it. Shikamaru put on a professional smirk on his face. Then the four of them acted separately. Shikamaru and Choji rushed to the canteen, taking advantage of the break to stock up on snacks. After Fungin and Hinata learned that Yuhi Hong was dating Asuma, they set off to another shopping street full of couples. After arriving at the commercial street, he realized that there were really many people here. Compared with the usual number of people in the alley near his home, the difference in the number of people was huge. Hinata, do you see Kurenai? He had no choice but to let Hinata look around with her Byakugan open, focusing on Yuhi Kurenai's figure. The unique white eyes of the Hyuga clan can see things within a radius of 1 kilometer, and can also clearly see the meridians, acupuncture points and chakra flow of the target. Suddenly, Hinata's eyes lit up. Over there, Yoshi. Fungin took Hinata's little hand and rushed in the direction she pointed. Teacher Hong, your nightmare is here, let me go, and you still want to have a good date. Dream. However, as soon as his fighting spirit arose, it was wiped out in the crowd. 5 minutes passed, and they just said the word, borrowed, dozens of times. There were so many people, and it was impossible for him to jump up and down on the roof with Hinata. People were said to be intimidating. Hinata blinked and asked, are you still going? Go, I have to ruin her good deeds today. Since he already knew the direction of Yuhi Kurenai, Fungin asked Hinata to close her Byakugan and open them again when the time comes. Cat ears, sell cat ears. A shop displayed a variety of headbands, and the owner with a sinister look on his face shouted loudly. He didn't show any embarrassment and promoted his products with a smile to every young man passing by. Handsome guy, the beauty next to you is so pretty, and those pink cat ears will definitely make her even more eye-catching. The two men and women holding hands stopped in front of the store. The man asked, do you want it? Let's go. I don't want it. It's something only children wear. The woman took the man's hand and walked away. Don't leave, there are products for mature women here too. However, the two left without looking back. After Fangin and the two came closer, they couldn't help but complain in their hearts when they saw his sly look on his face. Why do profiteers all over the world look like this? You can tell they are profiteers at a glance. He originally thought that many people would like the cat ears he bought and make a lot of money from them, but he didn't expect that most of the people who bought them would be little girls. This is the result of not examining the market. When the boss saw Fangin and Hinata, his eyes suddenly shone brightly. He shouted hurriedly, "Little handsome guy, little beauty, look at this cute cat ear headband." Fangin glanced sideways, expressing disdain. Who in this age would still like to wear cat ear headbands on their heads? So funny. Just when he was about to walk forward, he found Hinata standing there looking at the cat ear headband in the boss's hand. "Ah," Fangin asked hesitantly, "do you like it?" Hinata was a little embarrassed and nodded coyly. Fangin looked strange. He really didn't expect Hinata to like cat ear headbands. "Boss, how much does one cost?" The boss smiled quickly. "This store is a good one, and the price is 98 taels. 98 taels. Why don't you go grab it? A bowl of Ichiraku ramen is only 60 taels. As expected, I guessed right. I will never go to the store of the boss with a sinister look to buy anything in the future. I am definitely slapped in the face by a profiteer. However, Fangin's complaints are complaints, and you still have to buy them. The money for 2 bowls of ramen is a drop in the bucket for him who has little savings." He handed the money to the boss and asked Hinata to choose a headband based on her preference. Hinata spent a long time choosing, and finally pointed at the pink cat ear headband. Fangin took the headband and put it in his hand. He looked at it horizontally and vertically and felt it didn't look good. He sighed inwardly. It's normal for 12-year-old girls to like this. He then pulled both sides of the headband and put it on Hinata's head. After putting it on, I didn't wait for him to say anything. The boss on the side suddenly spoke up. "Wow, the little beauty looks like a fairy descending to earth with a cat-eared headband. The moon is shy of the flowers, and the country is beautiful. The country is beautiful and fragrant, and she looks like a fairy." Fangin glared at him fiercely. "If I ask you to continue speaking, you have finished speaking all the words. What else can I say?" The boss smiled and calmed down. Hinata raised her head and looked at Fangin shyly. "Does it look good?" Seeing Hinata's cute appearance with cat ears made Fangin stunned and speechless. She is like a fairy descending to earth, shying away from the flowers when the moon is closed, captivating the country and the city. The country is beautiful and fragrant, and her appearance is as beautiful as a fairy. The stern-looking boss glanced at him. This is blatant plagiarism. After the boss shouted, the passers-by all around looked at Hinata. Feeling that she was being watched, Hinata shyly hid behind Fangin. Everyone saw Hinata, who was wearing cat ears, sticking out her little head behind Fangin. One man subconsciously exclaimed, so cute. What did you say?" The man's ear was pulled by the woman who was traveling with him. The man looked hurt and quickly begged for mercy. It seemed that the woman was really cruel. Guy, I also want cat ears." There was another woman who was acting coquettishly to the people walking beside her. How could the man who was traveling with him stand this? His face turned red and he shouted, "Buy, the boss will give you 10. As Hinata looked stunning and cute after wearing cat ears, many women who originally expressed disdain came to the store. After a while, the surrounding area was filled with water. Most of them are just older than the age limit for wearing this type of headband, and they are embarrassed to wear it. Now they are all gathered together, and they have become thick-skinned. "Boss, I want to buy 15. Guy, I want it too. I want 20. I want 50 for riding a horse." These people have such a strange desire to win that even Boiling Sheep would shake his head when he saw them. Seeing that Lihuo was coming, the sly-eyed boss suddenly burst out with a speed comparable to that of Genin, and instantly took out more types of headbands from the warehouse for sale. There is also this blue butterfly headband. It's only for 198 taels. I also want. Fangin was dumbfounded. Is this the so-called Dolly Garden effect? Because they are blocked here, the other roads are much wider. Fangin took Hinata's little hand and rushed towards Yuhi Hong's direction. Not long after, the two saw Yuhi Kurenai and Asuma holding hands and being intimate. Fangin was furious, and all the frustration he had felt all morning was vented at this moment. While sealing the secret, he quickly approached the two of them. Magic Naraku meet technique. The moment the genjutsu covered the two of them, Yuhi Kurenai's unique perception ability instantly sensed that someone was using genjutsu on her. She quickly formed the yin seal with her hands to disrupt the flow of her own chakra. Untie. Yuhi Hong woke up in the blink of an eye. She turned quickly to look for her enemy. She glanced back and saw Asuma standing there blankly. It looked like he was under an illusion. What an idiot. A Jonin can still perform the most basic genjutsu. Yuhi Kurenai put her hand on Asuma helplessly. Untie. The moment the flow of chakra in his body was disrupted, Asuma also regained consciousness. He immediately hugged Yuri Hong tightly into his arms. Kurenai Yuhi's face was slightly heated by his move. Although Asuma had been pursuing Kurenai Yuhi for a long time, this was the first time she felt Asuma was so bold. This elm knot finally came to its senses. Fangin, who was hiding in the dark, had his molars almost broken. I'm here to cause trouble. Do you think I'm here to help you in times of need? Hinata on the side looked at Yuhi Hong and Asuma hugging each other, glanced at Fangin, and lowered his head shyly, not knowing what he was thinking. Immediately, Asuma said with a sobbing tone. Hong, I just saw you died suddenly. ? Yuhi Hong was stunned and broke away from his arms angrily. That's why you died suddenly. I originally thought that Yu Dada was enlightened, but it turned out that he was caught in an illusion while riding a horse. Asuma quickly took her hand, ignoring the passers-by and looking at them affectionately. Red, is this elm-headed person really enlightened now? Shihi Hong whispered in her heart. When she saw the seriousness in Asuma's eyes, her heart beat a beat faster. Then, their faces gradually got closer and closer. Mada, what are you doing in broad daylight? What to do? Fangin knew that it would be too late if he didn't jump out at this time. As they half promised and half decided, they probably wouldn't be able to go home tonight. Red Yuhi, Sarutobi Asuma, what are you doing? Fangin grabbed Hinata and jumped out, angrily interrupting the two of them. Hinata didn't dare to look at Yuhi Kurenai and muttered softly. Fangin, it's not good for us to do this. Fangin gritted her teeth and said, she let me go on a date, which caused a double mental crush on me. My pain is greater than hers. When Asuma heard someone calling him, he immediately stood up straight, as if standing in a military posture. Yuhi Hong frowned, turned around, and shouted angrily. Fangin, what do you want to do? Fangin chuckled, took out his kunai, jumped up towards Yuhi Kurenai, and rushed over. Before Kurenai Yuhi could stop her, Asuma stood in front of her. He quickly took out his unique chakra knife. He jumped up suddenly and cut Fangin in half with one knife. However, not only did blood not spurt out, but black ink-like liquid flowed out, and they suddenly became two Fangin. Kasumi servant technique. Yuri's red eyelashes fluttered slightly. Untie. The black figure of Fangin emerging from the surrounding ground and buildings gradually disappeared. The figures of Fangin and Hinata standing not far away gradually became clearer. Fangin, have you really learned it? Yuhi Hong still couldn't believe it. How long had it been? Fangin's face was gloomy. Did you forget that today is the last day of the bet? Wash the motor. If he hadn't said it, Yuhi Hong would never have thought that today was the last day. Asuma looked at Yuhi Kurenai in confusion. What bet? Kurenai Yuhi explained. He is Fangin, my student. I made a bet with him last week. If he can master 2 genjutsu within a week, I will agree to a condition proposed by him. It seems that he also used the previous magic Narakumi technique. Yuhi Hong thought for a moment. You win, I keep my word, you can raise it. Fangin glanced at the tall Sarutobi Asuma and felt that some of the words he said might not be appropriate. He swallowed what he wanted to say. Let's talk about it later, I won't disturb you guys. Fangin took Hinata's little hand and turned to leave. Hinata obediently nodded to Yuhi Kurenai to say goodbye. Shihi Hong looked at Fangin and the two leaving and rolled her eyes. It looks like you two are the ones who are tired. Asuma asked sideways. Hong, I remember you said you mastered the genjutsu in a month, right? Then the kid mastered 2 kinds of illusions in a week. Yes, he is simply a monster. I have been with him for so long, and I have never been able to see through him. I always feel that what he shows is just the tip of the iceberg. Yuhi Hong's eyes were filled with relief and a hint of loneliness. Once upon a time, she was also a genius who was dubbed the strongest illusionist. But now that the things that I was once proud of have been surpassed in all aspects, it is inevitable that I feel a little sad. Asuma saw a hint of unwillingness in her eyes, but didn't know how to comfort her. He subconsciously took out the cigarette and was about to put it on his mouth when he remembered that Yuhi Hong was still around. He carefully held the cigarette to his ear and restrained his restless heart. A few more days passed. Regarding the bet, Feng'an didn't think about what he needed, so he put it aside for now. During this period, he also mastered some more practical ninjutsu based on his past life memories. For example, the A-level illusion developed by Senju Tobarama, Dark Walk Technique. It is an illusion that specifically blocks vision. It is obvious who Tobarama is targeting. At the same time, it also has some effect on the cell activation of third Reikage. When he unreservedly covers all the cells in his body with thunder attribute chakra, although it is not as strong as the third Reikage's physical body, it is already difficult to hurt him with ordinary shurikens. But there hasn't been much progress in the blood inheritance limit that he cares about most. In nearly 2 weeks, only half the size of a table tennis ball was able to gather the power of yin and yang. In his opinion, if he doesn't go to the 3 holy lands of immortals, there won't be any big changes in a short time. At this time, Feng'an was training while speculating on Naruto's situation. Now, they should have met Momochi Zabuza, right? For Feng'an in his previous life, this was the battle that impressed him the most. If Bai was a girl, Feng'an might already be on her way to the country of waves at this time. It's a pity that Kishimoto, the girl in the painting, insists on being a boy. Bai is obviously a cute girl, so she insists on being a boy. This made Feng'an, who was young at the time, unable to let go for a long time. Feng'an sighed and turned to look at Hinata, who was dripping with sweat. Hinata, who was training, was keenly aware of Feng'an's gaze. She smiled shyly at him. Seeing this, Feng'an also smiled. He stopped thinking about Naruto's situation. You already have a treasure like Hinata, so why take the risk and covet other people's things? At this time, Yuhi Hong came from a distance and greeted. Come here, everyone. Hearing the sound, Feng'an and others stopped what they were doing and gathered around Yuhi Hong. Inuzuka Kiba asked, "What's wrong?" Kurenai-sensei. Yuhi Hong glanced at everyone and said seriously, "The Chunin exam should be held in about half a month. Do you want to participate?" Quote, "Of course, who would do the task of finding cats and dogs and catching thieves every day if it wasn't for the Chunin exam?" As Inuzuka Kiba spoke excitedly, Hinata and Shino cast glances of approval. If not forced by life, who would be willing to give up for rice? And they do those boring tasks because to register for the Chunin exam, you must first meet 8 points, which means completing at least 8 D-level tasks. Feng'an was indifferent to this. He is not very willing to take the Chunin exam. His mental age is earlier than the age of burning youth, and he does not have much passion for the fame and battle they pursue. And he also knew that because Orochimaru came to carry out a plan to destroy Konoha, Shikamaru was the only one who finally passed the Chunin exam and became a Chunin. Even if they want to be Chunin, they basically have to wait until the 2nd year. Yuhi Hong nodded and said she would help them sign up. Then she said to Feng'an, "Come on." Feng'an nodded and followed. The two came to a corner slightly away from Hinata and others. Yuhi Hong looked hesitant and said, "Feng'an, there is something I need to tell you." "Well, you say. I told Mr. Hokage about you. He agreed that a 4-person team would get points for completing the task. However, the Chunin exam selection must be done in groups of 3. Hearing Yuri Hong's hesitant words, Feng'an smiled. No wonder she looked a little unhappy. "It's okay, Teacher Hong, I won't take the Chunin exam." Seeing his appearance, Yuhi Hong thought he was pretending to be calm and comforting herself. "Actually, if you want to participate, I can help you keep an eye on whether other teams are short of players. In Konoha village, not every genin is led by a teacher. Some genin with mediocre qualifications and no teacher lead usually form temporary teams if they want to pass the Chunin assessment. The team formed temporarily has almost zero chance of passing the selection due to problems such as running in. Although the Chunin exam is accompanied by mortality, very old genin can be seen taking the exam every year. Maybe the housing prices in Konoha are too expensive and I have to give it a try. Facing Yuri Hong's suggestion, Fungin waved his hand. No, I don't really want to participate. Naruto and Sasuke, who are known as the strongest genin in Konoha, think there is nothing wrong with being genin. Even if the money is not enough in the future, there is still Hinata who can support her. The Hyuga family has a great business and is one of the best families in Konoha after all. How good it is to eat soft rice. Kurenai Yuhi sighed. Okay, but before the Chunin exam, if you want to participate, you can contact me and I will try my best to help you find good teammates. Don't worry, Teacher Hong, I really won't participate. After Fungin's repeated emphasis, Yuri Hong left. He was speechless. Did he act like he was participating? Chunin exam selection. None of the dogs will go. However, it wasn't long before he regretted it. As Fungin was lying under the big tree to enjoy the cool air, Hinata sat next to him. Fungin, I heard from Teacher Hong that you don't plan to take the Chunin assessment. He removed the leaves from his eyes. Yeah, I'm not very interested in becoming a Chunin. Anyway, we just happen to be in groups of 3. But there seemed to be something unspeakable in Hinata's tone. Fungin thought for a while and sat up, looking at Hinata. Do you want me to take the Chunin exam? Kindness. Hinata nodded. Fungin showed a faint smile. If it's Hinata, it's not impossible to participate, but why? Do you want to take the assessment with me? Hinata nodded shyly, then shook her head. This made Fungin scratch his head in confusion. What does it mean? Hinata's little hands were clasped together and her fingers were twirling around, very nervous. Her eyes were wandering for a while, then firm for a while. After hesitating for a long time, she finally blushed and showed a determined expression. Actually, it's my father. He said that if you perform well in the Chunin selection exam, you will stop blocking us. Her voice went from loud to soft. The last 3 words, together, she said with her mouth closed. But this did not affect the overall word order. Fungin's eyes widened. What Chunin selection test? This is clearly an assessment from my father-in-law. This horse has no choice but to participate. Fungin held Hinata's little hand and stared at Hinata seriously. Don't worry Hinata, I will participate. Just watch me punch Naruto and kick Sasuke. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.